It is late, and the house is quiet, but sleep does not come. There is a woman, perhaps she is you, sitting by a window, watching the way the moonlight paints the familiar shapes of her world, in shades of silver and grey. The silence outside is deep, but inside, her mind is a storm of activity. Memories, vivid and sharp, rise unbidden. Moments from decades ago playing out as if they were yesterday. A word left unsaid. A path not taken. The face of a loved one, long gone. These are followed by a cascade of worries about tomorrow, a quiet hum of anxiety about health, about family, about the simple, profound fact of time's relentless passage. The lines on her face, etched by laughter and by tears, tell the story of a life fully lived, yet they also hold the tension of these sleepless nights, the weight of a spirit that cannot find its rest. This experience, this feeling of being adrift in the quiet hours, is not a personal failing. It is not a sign of weakness. It is, for so many, a deep and shared truth of this chapter of life. It is the consequence of living in a world that never stops demanding our attention, a world of noise and speed that continues to echo in our minds long after the day is done. It is the accumulation of a lifetime of roles, of duties, of expectations met and unmet. It is the profound spiritual fatigue that comes when the soul has carried its burdens for so long, a weariness that sleep alone cannot heal. We feel a pressure to understand it all, to have all the answers, to reconcile every past regret with every future fear. And in this impossible task, we find ourselves overwhelmed, our inner peace lost in the relentless chatter of our own minds. But what if there was another way? Not a way to fight the mind or to silence it with force, but a way to gently befriend it. What if there was a path, an ancient and quiet path, that leads not to some distant, holy place, but back to the very center of your own being? This is the gentle invitation of Zen wisdom. It is not a doctrine to be studied, or a complex religion to be adopted, but rather a simple, profound art of returning home. It is a way of discovering a stillness that exists beneath the noise, a calm harbor that is always available, even in the midst of the storm. It is a path that suggests the most profound beauty is not the fleeting beauty of youth, but the deep, radiant beauty of a soul that has found its peace, a quiet light that shines from within. This journey is an invitation to uncover that light, to find a rest so deep it soothes the spirit, and to finally sleep, not in exhaustion, but in the gentle embrace of your own inner radiance. We begin with a gentle invitation, a call to come home to the only place we ever truly live, the present moment. Our minds, through long and devoted habit, are restless travelers. They are like seasoned archaeologists, perpetually sifting through the dust of the past, examining artifacts of memory, polishing old triumphs, and reopening the wounds of past sorrows. They hold conversations with ghosts, replaying scenes, wishing for different outcomes, and asking questions that can no longer be answered. This museum of yesterday is a vast and intricate place, and we can spend hours, days, even years wandering its halls, lost in its exhibits, forgetting that the sun is shining outside, right now. When the mind is not in the past, it is a frantic stage manager, rehearsing for a future that has not yet arrived. It writes scripts of catastrophe and anxiety. It auditions fears. It designs worries down to the smallest detail. It builds elaborate theaters of what if, playing out 1,000 possible futures, most of them draped in shadow. We exhaust ourselves preparing for confrontations that will never happen and celebrating victories that are purely imaginary. In this constant, exhausting commute between a past that is gone and a future that is a fantasy, we miss our lives. Life is not in the yesterday we analyze, nor the tomorrow we dread, Life is here. It is in the simple, humble, and often overlooked space of the now. It is in the feeling of the chair supporting your body, the light filtering through the window, the distant sound of a passing car. It is here, in this one, single, breathing moment. To find peace is not to build a more beautiful museum of the past, or a more secure fortress for the future. It is simply to arrive where you already are. It is to step out of the noisy, crowded corridors of thought and into the quiet, sunlit room of the present. This is the first, most profound secret of Zen wisdom. The present moment is a refuge. It is solid ground beneath your feet. When you feel lost in the mists of memory and fear, it asks nothing of you. It does not demand that you be better or wiser or different than you are. It simply offers itself, a space of pure being, a sanctuary from the tyranny of your own thinking. But how do we enter this sanctuary? How do we, whose minds have been wandering for 60, 70, or more years, learn to be still? The key is exquisitely simple. It is your own breath. Your breath is the most faithful companion you have ever known. It has been with you from your first moment of life to this very moment now, and it will stay with you until your last. It never leaves you. And most importantly, your breath is always and only in the present. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot breathe in the future. To feel your breath is to be anchored instantly in the here and now. It is the golden thread that can lead you out of the labyrinth of your thoughts and back to the reality of your own body, your own life, happening in this instant. So, let us try this. There is no need for any special posture or preparation. You can be sitting or lying down. Just allow yourself to be comfortable. Close your eyes if that feels right for you, or simply lower your gaze. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to force. The first step is simply to notice. Notice that you are breathing. For a lifetime, this breath has happened automatically, without your conscious command. Now, for just a few moments, bring your gentle attention to it. Feel the air as it enters your nostrils, perhaps cool and fresh. Follow its path down into your lungs. Feel the gentle expansion of your chest, the soft rise of your abdomen, and then feel the release as you exhale, the gentle fall of the abdomen, the chest, as the air, now slightly warmer, leaves your body. Do not try to change your breathing in any way. Do not force it to be deeper or slower. Your body knows exactly how to breathe. Your only task is to be the quiet, curious observer. Just feel the rhythm, the gentle, dependable rhythm of in and out, rise and fall. A wave of breath coming in, a wave of breath going out. As you do this, you will notice something very quickly. Your mind will wander. A thought will arise. A memory will flash. A sound will distract you. A plan will begin to form. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. This is simply what minds do. The practice is not about preventing the mind from wandering. The practice is in the gentle and kind act of noticing that it has wandered, and then, without any judgment or frustration, softly guiding it back to the feeling of the breath. Think of it like training a small beloved puppy. You ask it to sit, and it sits for a moment. Then it sees a butterfly and runs off. You do not scold the puppy. You do not despair. You simply smile, walk over, and gently lead it back to its spot. Again and again and again. This is how we treat our own minds, with that same boundless patience and kindness. Oh, the mind has wandered to a worry about a grandchild. That's okay. Gently, we guide it back to the feeling of the air entering the nostrils. Oh, It has drifted to a regret from 20 years ago. That's okay. Gently, without judgment, we bring it home. Back to the feeling of the chest rising and falling. Each time you bring your attention back, you are strengthening a muscle of presence. You are casting a vote for stillness. You are deepening the pathway home. Let the breath be your anchor in the ocean of being. As you rest your attention there, you may begin to notice subtle shifts. A tension you were holding in your shoulders might begin to soften. The tightness in your jaw might release just a little. The frantic inner chatter might quiet down, moving from the foreground to the background. You are not silencing the noise. You are simply choosing not to sit in the middle of it. You are choosing to rest in the quiet presence of the breath. This is your power. This is your freedom. There is a well-known story about a great Zen master. Someone asked him, "What is the secret to your deep peace? What is your secret practice?" The master replied, "It is very simple. When I eat, I just eat. When I walk, I just walk. When I sleep, I just sleep." The person was confused. "But master," he said, "everyone does that." The master smiled gently and said, "Number, when most people eat, they are thinking of 100 other things. Their bodies are at the table, but their minds are in the office, or in an argument from last week, or in a worry about tomorrow. When they walk, they are not feeling their feet on the earth. They are rushing to their destination, lost in thought. They are never truly where they are. That is why they are not at peace." This simple story holds the heart of our practice. For so many years, we have been called upon to be masters of multitasking, juggling the needs of children, partners, work, and home. Our attention has been fractured, scattered in 1,000 different directions. This practice of returning to the breath is a way of healing that fragmentation. It is an invitation to do one thing at a time, with our whole being. When we drink a cup of tea, we just drink the tea. We feel its warmth. We smell its aroma. We taste its flavor. The tea becomes a moment of deep presence, a meditation. When we feel the sun on our skin, we just feel the sun. We are not thinking about what we need to do next. We are simply alive in that moment of warmth. This is not a war against your thoughts. To fight your thoughts is to give them more strength, more energy. The thoughts can continue. The memories can arise. The worries can float by. We are simply changing where we place the spotlight of our awareness. We are moving it from the chaotic, ever-changing drama of our thinking mind and placing it on the calm, steady, and ever-present anchor of the breath. In doing so, the thoughts begin to lose their power over us. They are no longer the tyrannical rulers of our inner world. They become like clouds, passing in the sky, or sounds heard from a distance. We can acknowledge them without having to follow them, without having to believe them. So this is the gentle invitation. It is an invitation to come home. You don't need to travel anywhere. You don't need to read 100 books. You only need to find your breath. It is here, waiting for you. A refuge of stillness, a sanctuary of peace, available in this moment, and the next, and the next. This is the first step on our journey. We have found the solid ground of the present moment. Now that we have found this quiet space, this inner sky of awareness, we can begin to look more closely at what arises within it. We can learn to observe the clouds that pass through our inner sky, the thoughts and feelings that come and go, without being swept away by the storm. Having found our way home to the present moment, anchored by the gentle rhythm of the breath, we can now turn our attention to the nature of the mind itself. For many of us, the inner world is not a quiet sanctuary. It is a noisy, chaotic place, inhabited by what Zen masters have for centuries, called the monkey mind. Imagine a restless monkey in a tree full of fruit. It never stays still. It swings wildly from one branch to another, grabbing a piece of fruit, taking one bite, and then instantly dropping it to swing to another branch, distracted by another, seemingly better piece of fruit. It chatters incessantly, screeches at imagined threats, and is in a state of constant, agitated motion. This is a perfect metaphor for our untrained minds. Our monkey mind swings from a memory of childhood, to a worry about a doctor's appointment next week, to a fragment of a song, to an old resentment, to a grocery list, all within the space of a few seconds. It is never satisfied, never at rest. It is the source of that relentless inner commentary, the voice that judges us, criticizes others, plans, worries, and regrets. For most of our lives, we have been completely identified with this chattering monkey. We believe its voice is our voice. We believe its frantic energy is who we are. We are tossed about by its moods and impulses, feeling anxious when it swings to a branch of fear, and sad when it swings to a branch of loss. Living this way is utterly exhausting. It is like trying to find rest in the middle of a never-ending storm. But the great secret, the profound liberation offered by this path, is this: you are not the monkey. You are not the storm. You are the sky in which the storm takes place. This is perhaps the most helpful and beautiful metaphor in all of Zen practice. Imagine that your true nature, your fundamental consciousness, is a vast, open, limitless sky. It is inherently clear, peaceful, and spacious. It has no edges, no boundaries. It is pure, silent awareness. Now, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, your sensations, these are like the weather. They are the clouds that drift through the sky. Some days, the sky is filled with light, fluffy, white clouds of happy thoughts and pleasant feelings. Other days, dark, heavy storm clouds of anger, sadness, or fear gather. Sometimes the clouds are dramatic and full of thunder and lightning. Sometimes they are just a hazy, grey mist of vague anxiety. The weather is constantly changing. No cloud ever stays forever. But here is the crucial truth. No matter how dark the storm, no matter how violent the winds, the sky itself is never damaged. The clouds cannot stain the sky. The thunder cannot deafen it. The lightning cannot scar it. The storm may block our view of the blue for a while, making us believe the entire sky is grey and angry. But we know that above those clouds, the vast, peaceful blue expanse remains, untouched and unharmed. When the storm inevitably passes, the sky is revealed, as pristine and peaceful as it ever was. You are that sky. Your sadness is a cloud. Your anxiety is a cloud. Your memories are clouds. Your pain is a cloud. They are temporary weather patterns passing through the vast, unchanging space of your awareness. To know this, not just as an idea, but as a lived experience, is the beginning of freedom. So how do we learn to live as the sky, instead of getting lost in the clouds? We practice the art of non-judgmental observation. When you are sitting quietly, anchored in your breath, and a thought arises, the practice is to simply notice it. You can even label it gently in your mind. A thought about what to make for dinner appears. You can simply note thinking or planning. A memory of a harsh word someone said to you years ago appears. You can note memory or sadness. The key is the tone of this inner labeling. It is not harsh or dismissive. It is gentle, kind, and curious, like a scientist observing a natural phenomenon. Ah, look at that. A worry cloud has just drifted in. We typically react to our thoughts in one of three ways, all of which cause suffering. If a pleasant thought appears, a happy memory, a fantasy of a lovely vacation, we tend to grasp at it. We run after that fluffy white cloud, trying to hold on to it, refusing to let it go. This creates craving and attachment, and when the cloud naturally drifts away, we feel a sense of loss and disappointment. If an unpleasant thought appears, a fear, a regret, a painful memory, we tend to push it away. We fight with that dark storm cloud, trying to force it out of our sky. But what we resist persists. Fighting the cloud only gives it more energy, makes it bigger and more powerful. The third reaction is the most common. We get completely lost in the cloud. A thought of sadness appears, and we become the sadness. We forget we are the sky, and we believe we are the storm. We merge with the thought, and it consumes our entire world. The Zen path offers a fourth option: to simply let the clouds be. We don't chase the good ones. We don't fight the bad ones. And we don't get lost in any of them. We rest as the sky, and we allow the weather of our minds to come and go, all on its own. We watch with a gentle, patient curiosity as a thought appears on the horizon of our awareness, floats through the center of our mind, and then disappears on the other side. We do not serve it tea. We do not argue with it. We do not invite it to stay. We simply acknowledge its presence and let it continue on its journey. There is a famous Zen story that illustrates this perfectly. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long pilgrimage. They came to a river where the bridge had been washed away. The river was swollen, and the crossing was muddy. A beautiful young woman in a fine silk kimono stood there, afraid to cross for fear of ruining her clothes. Without a word, the senior monk walked over to her, lifted her up in his arms, carried her across the Ava, and gently set her down on the other side. He then bowed and continued on his way. The junior monk was scandalized. He hurried to catch up, his mind racing. They were monks, sworn to a code of conduct that strictly forbade them from touching women. How could his master have done such a thing? It was a violation of their most sacred vows. He walked behind his master in fuming silence for hours. He replayed the scene over and over in his mind, his indignation growing with every step. Finally, as evening approached, he could not bear it any longer. He rushed up to the senior monk and burst out, "Master, I must ask you, how could you do that back at the river? You know we are forbidden to touch women. You broke your vows." The senior monk looked at the junior monk with calm, compassionate eyes. "Oh, you mean the woman at the river?" he said. "I left her on the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is a powerful teaching for all of us. The woman represents any thought, any event, any emotion that enters our lives. She is a cloud passing through the sky. The senior monk experienced even the carried herald, then he let her go. The moment was over, and his mind was free. The junior monk, however, picked her up in his mind and carried her for miles and miles. He was burdened not by the event itself, but by his obsessive thinking about it, by his judgment, his anger, and his inner turmoil. How many women at the river are we still carrying in our minds? An unkind remark from years ago? A mistake we made in our youth? A worry about something that might never happen? We exhaust ourselves carrying these mental burdens long after the actual moments have passed. The practice of watching thoughts as clouds is the practice of learning to leave the woman on the riverbank. It is the practice of letting go, moment by moment. When we can rest as the sky, a profound sense of freedom and space opens up in our lives. We realize that we are not at the mercy of our moods. We are not the victims of our own minds. Sadness can visit, but it does not have to become our home. Fear can knock on the door, but we do not have to invite it in for a long stay. We have a choice. We can choose to place our attention on the vast, peaceful sky of our awareness, rather than on the temporary, passing cloud. This does not make us unfeeling or detached. On the contrary, by not being consumed by our own inner storms, we can respond to the world and to the people in our lives with far greater wisdom, clarity, and compassion. When we are not lost in the fog of our own anxiety, we can truly see and hear another person who is suffering. When we are not weighed down by the burdens of our own past, we can be more present, light, and joyful for our loved ones today. Your mind is a sky. It is vast and beautiful, and its true nature is peace. For a lifetime, you may have believed you were the clouds, tossed about by every change in the mental weather. But now, you are invited to reclaim your true heritage. You are the sky. You are the spacious, silent witness to it all. Practice this throughout your day. When a thought comes, see it as a cloud. When a feeling arises, see it as a cloud. Know that you are the vast, unbreakable space in which all of this weather happens. This practice of watching thoughts as passing clouds is a powerful tool for all of our mental weather. But some clouds are particularly dark and persistent. They carry the heavy rain of regret and the cold winds of yesterday. It is to these specific, challenging clouds of the past that we must now turn our compassionate attention. Having learned to rest as the spacious sky, allowing the clouds of ordinary thought to pass without being swept away, we now turn our attention to a particular kind of weather system. These are not just passing clouds, but heavy, persistent storm fronts that circle back again and again, carrying the cold rain of regret and the biting winds of self-blame. These are the storms of the past. As we grow older, the landscape of our memory grows vast, and for many of us, it is populated by ghosts. The ghost of a decision we wish we could undo, the ghost of a relationship that ended in pain, the ghost of words spoken in anger or words of love left unsaid. These ghosts visit us in the quiet hours, whispering the most painful phrases in the human language. If only I had been a better mother. If only I had taken that other path. If only I had known then what I know now. This if only thinking is a form of self-torture. It is like carrying a heavy bag filled with stones on your back, day after day. Each stone is a specific regret, a particular mistake, a remembered failure. We carry this bag for so long that we forget what it feels like to walk without its weight. We come to believe that this burden is a part of who we are, a just punishment for our past imperfections. We become the jailers of our own hearts, locking ourselves in a prison of memory, convinced that we deserve to be there. But the profound truth that Zen wisdom offers is that the door to this prison is not locked from the outside. The door has been open all along. The past itself is gone. It is smoke. It is a dream that has ended. The only thing that is real, the only thing that has power, is our continual reliving and rejudging of it in this present moment. The suffering does not come from the event that happened 10, 30, or 50 years ago. The suffering comes from the story we keep telling ourselves about it today. The key to freedom is not to magically change the past, but to change our relationship with it, right here, right now. This process begins with an act of radical compassion, an act that may at first feel unfamiliar or even impossible. It is the act of extending deep and unconditional compassion to the person you used to be. For a moment, I invite you to bring to mind a memory that still carries a sting of regret. Do not choose your biggest trauma, just a memory where you wish you had acted differently. Now, instead of replaying the event with judgment, I want you to try to see the woman who lived it. See yourself at that age. Look into her eyes. What was she feeling then? What pressures was she under? What fears did she carry? What was the extent of her knowledge, her wisdom, her emotional maturity at that point in her life? Did she know everything that you know today? Of course not. She was doing the best that she could, with the understanding, the resources, and the emotional tools she had available to her in that moment. We so often judge our past selves with the full benefit of our present wisdom, and this is a profoundly unfair trial. It is like scolding a child for not knowing how to read a novel. The compassionate act is to look upon that younger version of yourself, not with scorn, but with the same tenderness you might offer to a struggling child or a dear friend. You can even speak to her in your heart, instead of the old, harsh refrain, "How could you have been so foolish?" You can whisper, "I see you. I see how hard that was for you. You were doing the best you could with what you knew. It's okay. I forgive you. I understand." This is not about excusing harmful behavior or denying that mistakes were made. It is about releasing the poison of self-blame that you continue to drink in the present. Forgiveness, especially of the self, is not about condoning the past. It is about liberating the future. The ancient Taoist sage, Zhuangzi, told a story that shines a powerful light on this. A man was in his boat, rowing across a river. It was a misty morning, and out of the fog, another boat came crashing into his, with a loud thud. The man was furious. He stood up and began to shout and curse at the person in the other boat, blaming them for their carelessness. But as he looked closer, peering through the mist, he realized there was no one in the other boat. It was an empty boat, adrift on the current, that had bumped into him. In that instant, all of his anger vanished. How can you be angry at an empty boat? Zhuangzi's profound question to us is this: what if all the boats that bump into us are empty? The person who hurt you decades ago may have been an empty boat, adrift on the currents of their own pain, confusion, and ignorance. Their actions may not have been a personal attack, but a manifestation of their own suffering. And most importantly, for our practice today, that past version of yourself that you judge so harshly is also an empty boat. She was adrift on the currents of her circumstances, her conditioning, her limited understanding. To stand here, in the present moment, and continue to shout at that empty boat is a futile act. It does nothing to the boat, which has long since drifted down the river of time. It only disturbs your own peace, right here, on your own boat, today. When a memory of a past mistake arises, you can gently say to yourself, "Ah, the empty boat." This simple phrase can diffuse the anger and blame and bring a sense of spaciousness and peace. You see that there is no one there to blame, not even yourself. With this compassionate perspective, we can begin another transformative practice, reframing our past not as a catalogue of errors, but as a sacred curriculum designed specifically for our own awakening. Every mistake, every failure, every painful experience was a lesson. Perhaps that difficult relationship taught you the importance of self-respect and clear boundaries. Perhaps that financial struggle taught you the meaning of true wealth, which has nothing to do with money. Perhaps that moment you lost your temper taught you about the fire of anger and the need for mindfulness. Your past is not a series of scars that disfigure you. It is the very soil from which your present wisdom has grown. Without the mud of those experiences, the lotus of your current compassion and resilience could not have bloomed. The spiritual path is an alchemical one. It is about taking the dull, heavy lead of our painful experiences and, through the fire of our mindful attention and the warmth of our compassion, transforming it into the shining gold of wisdom. I invite you to look back at a difficult time in your life, and instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What did this teach me? How did I grow from this? What strength did I discover in myself because I endured this? When you change the question, the story changes. The narrative shifts from one of victimhood to one of empowerment. You are not the broken product of your past. You are the wise graduate of its lessons. Letting go, then, is not an act of forgetting. We cannot erase our memories, nor should we want to, for they have made us who we are. Letting go is an act of release. It is the conscious decision to set down the heavy bag of stones. You can acknowledge each stone, honor the lesson it taught you, and then gently place it on the ground and walk on, lighter and freer. You stop being the prisoner of your own history and become the peaceful student of it. You leave the woman on the riverbank. You stop shouting at the empty boat. You see the gold that was forged in the fire. As we gently set down these heavy burdens of yesterday, a new lightness and space can begin to enter our being. But the mind, in its habitual restlessness, abhors a vacuum. The moment we clear the space that was cluttered by the past, it immediately seeks to fill it with a new kind of clutter, the weeds of worry and anxiety about what is to come. Having faced the ghosts of yesterday, we must now learn to sit peacefully with the profound and beautiful mystery of tomorrow. Having learned to gently place the burdens of yesterday on the ground, freeing ourselves from the ghosts of regret, we often find our minds rushing to a new destination, the vast, uncharted territory of the future. If the past is a museum of memory, the future is a theater of the mind, and as we age, it often specializes in productions of fear. The mind becomes a tireless scriptwriter, composing dramatic scenes of what might go wrong. It presents vivid, detailed films of declining health, of physical pain, of losing our independence. It stages heartbreaking plays about loneliness, of watching the world change around us, of the inevitable goodbyes to loved ones. And it always saves the final act for the great, unknowable mystery of our own mortality. We sit in the dark audience of our own minds, watching these previews of coming attractions, and our bodies react as if they were real. Our hearts race, our shoulders tense, our stomachs clench. The suffering is not happening in the future. It is happening right here, right now, in this present moment. We are tormenting ourselves today with fears about a tomorrow that does not exist. This is one of the most subtle and powerful illusions our minds create. The future is a phantom. It is a concept, a dream, a projection. You have never lived in the future. You cannot take a single breath in the future. The only time, the only place you have ever been alive is now. To spend this precious, real moment worrying about a moment that is purely imaginary is the definition of suffering. It is like trying to find shelter from a storm that exists only in a painting. It is an exhausting and fruitless struggle against a ghost. The great liberation that this path offers is the realization that you do not have to control the future. In fact, you cannot. The future is, and always will be, uncertain. The attempt to make it certain is the very source of our anxiety. The true source of our power lies not in trying to manipulate the unseeable future, but in learning to skillfully and compassionately tend to the one moment we actually have, this one. The future is not a destination we are hurtling toward. It is a garden that grows from the seeds we are planting right now. If you plant seeds of worry, fear, and catastrophic thinking in the soil of this present moment, the garden of your future will inevitably grow weeds of anxiety. But if, in this moment, you can plant a seed of peace, a seed of acceptance, a seed of kindness toward yourself, you are cultivating a future that will have more peace, acceptance, and kindness in it. This shifts everything. The question is no longer, how can I prevent bad things from happening to me in the future? The question becomes, how can I meet this present moment with grace, wisdom, and courage? If you are afraid of future illness, the practice is not to endlessly worry, but to cultivate a kind and caring relationship with your body today. If you are afraid of future loneliness, the practice is to learn how to be a warm and gentle companion to yourself right now. If you are afraid of losing your faculties, the practice is to appreciate and engage your mind with curiosity and presence today. By focusing on the quality of your presence now, you are building the inner resources you will need to meet whatever the future holds. You are preparing not by worrying, but by strengthening. There is a timeless story from the East about a powerful king who was subject to great swings of mood. When his armies were victorious, his pride and arrogance were immense. When his kingdom faced famine or defeat, his despair was bottomless. He grew tired of this inner roller coaster and summoned the wisest sages in his land. He asked them for a magical gift. "I want you to create a ring for me," he commanded. "Inscribe something on it that will make me sober and thoughtful when I am at the peak of my joy, and will bring me comfort and hope when I am lost in sorrow." The sages conferred, and after some time, they returned to the king and presented him with a simple gold ring. The king looked at it, and etched into its surface were 4 simple words: "This too shall pass." The king was overjoyed, but as he looked at the ring, the words worked their magic. His joy became less of a grasping, feverish excitement and more of a calm, deep appreciation, for he knew this moment of triumph would pass. Later, when his beloved queen died and he was inconsolable with grief, he slumped onto his throne in despair. His fingers found the ring, and he read the words through his tears: "This too shall pass." A space opened up in his grief. The pain was still there, but it was no longer a solid, permanent wall. It was a storm that he knew, in time, would change. This simple phrase became his wisest counselor, the source of his equanimity. This ancient wisdom is the most powerful antidote to our fear of the future. That nagging worry about your health that keeps you awake at night, this too shall pass. That deep ache of loneliness that sometimes visits you in the afternoon, this too shall pass. The fear of your own mortality, this experience, this life, this too shall pass. This is not a philosophy of pessimism or resignation. It is a statement of profound realism. It acknowledges the fundamental law of the universe: impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing is fixed. And this law applies to pleasure as much as it does to pain. The sweet visit from a grandchild, the warmth of the sun on a perfect spring day, a moment of deep connection with a friend, these too shall pass. And knowing this does not diminish their beauty, it enhances it. It urges us to be fully present for these precious, fleeting moments, to savor them completely, because they are not permanent. Our society teaches us to fear change. We seek security, stability, permanence. We want to build a life that is safe and predictable. But this is like trying to build a stone fortress on the surface of a flowing river. Life is flow. Life is change. A body that did not change would be a corpse. A mind that did not change would be inert. To resist change is to resist the very essence of being alive. The practice of Zen is not to stop the river from flowing, but to learn how to navigate its currents with a light heart. It is to learn how to dance with impermanence. When we embrace the fact that everything is in flux, our fear of the future softens. The future is just more of the river, more of the dance. There will be rapids, and there will be calm pools. There will be sunshine and there will be rain. By learning to be present with it all, with the wisdom that this too shall pass, we stop fighting the river and begin to flow with it. This even applies to the greatest of our fears, the fear of death. So much of this fear is tied to the unknown future. By grounding ourselves so fully in the reality of the present moment, the urgency of the future begins to fade. When you are truly absorbed in the taste of a fresh strawberry, or the sound of birdsong, or the feeling of a kind hand in yours, in that moment, there is no fear of death. There is only life happening now. By living the moments we have with fullness and presence, we find that the anxiety about the final moment loses its terrible power. We are too busy living to be consumed by worrying about dying. So let us put down the heavy telescopes with which we try to scan the distant, hazy horizons of the future. Let us stop reading the terrifying scripts our minds have written. Our power is not out there, in some imagined tomorrow. It is right here. It is in the choice to meet this breath with awareness. It is in the gentle wisdom of knowing that all things, good and bad, beautiful and painful, are temporary. It is in the courage to plant seeds of peace in the only soil we will ever own, the soil of the present moment. We have now looked at the past with compassion and the future with wisdom. We see that our suffering comes from resisting what was and fearing what might be. This points us toward a central, unifying principle, a foundation upon which all inner peace is built. It is the profound and simple art of accepting reality exactly as it is in this moment. Having learned to approach the past with compassion and the future with wisdom, we arrive now at the very foundation of inner peace. It is a principle so simple it can be stated in 4 words, yet so profound it can take a lifetime to truly embody. The principle is this: stop arguing with reality. For most of our lives, we are engaged in a constant, low-grade war with what is. We have a deeply ingrained idea of how things should be, and we suffer whenever reality fails to match our blueprint. The weather should be warmer. My body shouldn't ache like this. That person should have behaved differently. This moment should be more exciting, more peaceful, more meaningful. This endless stream of shoulds and shouldn't haves creates a state of constant friction, a subtle but exhausting resistance to the life that is actually happening. It is like trying to swim upstream against a powerful river. We expend enormous amounts of energy, struggling, pushing, and fighting, yet we remain stuck, frustrated, and tired. We blame the river, but the river is just being a river. Our suffering comes not from the river itself, but from our futile and exhausting effort to force it to flow in the direction we want. What if we could learn to stop fighting? What if we could learn to turn around and flow with the current? This is the essence of acceptance. Now, in our culture, the word acceptance can be misunderstood. It can sound like weakness, like passive resignation, or giving up. We think it means we have to approve of or be happy about difficult situations. This is not at all what acceptance means in a spiritual context. Acceptance is not approval. You do not have to approve of having a chronic illness. You do not have to like the fact that someone has hurt you. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not throwing up your hands and saying, "I can't do anything, so I give up." In fact, it is the exact opposite. True acceptance is the courageous and clear-eyed act of seeing and acknowledging reality as it is, without any argument. It is the moment you stop fighting and say, "Okay, this is what is here, right now. This pain is in my body. This sadness is in my heart. This difficult situation is what I am facing." Imagine you are lost in a dark forest. You can spend all your energy raging against the forest, screaming, "I shouldn't be here. This is terrible. It's not fair." This changes nothing and only leaves you more tired and afraid. Or you can practice acceptance. You can stop, take a breath, and say, "Okay, I am lost in a dark forest." In that moment of clear acceptance, the panic subsides and a space opens up. In that space, you can start to use your intelligence. You can look for the stars. You can listen for the sound of water. You can feel the slope of the land. Acceptance is the necessary first step that allows for wise, skillful, and effective action to emerge. It is the shift from blind, reactive, struggling, to calm, conscious, responding. We can practice this in the small laboratory of our own bodies and minds. I invite you to find a comfortable position and just notice what is present in your experience right now. Perhaps there is a point of tension in your neck or an ache in your back. The habitual reaction is to tense up against it, to ignore it, or to wish it would go away. This is the argument, the resistance. The practice of acceptance is to turn your attention gently toward the sensation, to breathe into it, to mentally surround it with space, to meet it with a quiet, internal yes. Not a, "Yes, I love this pain," but a simple, factual, "Yes, this sensation is here now." You are not trying to fix it or get rid of it. You are simply dropping the argument with it. And in that dropping of the argument, you may notice a subtle shift. The sensation itself may not change, but your relationship to it does. The suffering, which was the resistance, begins to soften. The great Japanese Zen master Hakuin provides a perfect illustration of this profound peace. Hakuin was deeply revered by his community for his pure and simple life. One day, the beautiful daughter of a local merchant was found to be pregnant. Her angry parents demanded to know who the father was. Terrified, the young woman named Master Hakuin. The parents were enraged. They stormed to the temple, confronted the master, and accused him of hypocrisy and depravity. Hakuin listened to their entire tirade. And when they were finished, he simply and calmly replied, "Is that so?" His reputation was shattered. The villagers who once revered him now scorned him. When the child was born, the parents brought the infant and thrust it into his arms, saying, "You are the father, you will care for him." Without protest, Hakuin took the child. He accepted this new reality. He found ways to get milk from nursing mothers in the next village, and he cared for the baby with great tenderness and love. A year passed. The young mother's heart could no longer bear the guilt of her lie. She confessed to her parents that the real father was a young man who worked at the local fish market. The parents were horrified by what they had done. They rushed to Hakuin's temple, prostrating themselves, begging for his forgiveness, explaining the truth, and asking for the child back. Hakuin listened to their confession, and as he gently handed the healthy, happy child back to them, he said, with the same calm equanimity, "Is that so?" This story reveals a freedom that is almost beyond our imagination. Hakuin's peace did not depend on whether people praised him or condemned him. His inner state was not attached to his reputation. He was not at war with reality. When fame and adoration came, he met it with, "Is that so?" He did not cling to it. When disgrace and a baby came, he met it with, "Is that so?" He did not resist it. He simply accepted what was happening in each moment, and then did the next compassionate, necessary thing. He was free because he had completely let go of the argument of how things should be. He lived in the profound peace of what is. This practice of acceptance liberates an enormous amount of life force. Think of how much energy is consumed by our daily resistance. The energy it takes to fuel our resentment, to nurse our grievances, to worry about what others think, to wish our bodies were different, to argue with the past. It is a massive, constant drain on our inner resources. When we begin to practice acceptance, it's like unplugging a faulty, energy-sucking appliance. All of that energy that was being wasted in the futile fight against reality is suddenly freed up. This liberated energy is then available for much more creative and healing purposes. It can be used to love more fully, to see the world with more wonder, to act with more compassion, and to simply rest in a state of greater peace. This is the beauty of acceptance. It is the end of the war. It is laying down your arms and realizing there was never a battle to be won, only a reality to be met. It is the simple, yet radical, act of saying yes to this moment, exactly as it is. When we truly begin to practice this deep acceptance, when we stop arguing with reality and simply allow it to be as it is, we start to notice something extraordinary about its nature. We begin to see, with startling clarity, that the one thing we can always count on is that everything will change. This profound seeing of reality as it is leads us directly into the heart of one of life's greatest truths, the beautiful, ever-flowing river of impermanence. Having learned to greet reality with acceptance, to see things as they are, we now venture deeper into the very nature of that reality itself. We come to a truth that lies at the heart of our experience, a truth as vast and as constant as the sky, yet as intimate as our own breath. This is the truth of impermanence, the universal law of change. In the language of the Buddha, this is called anicca. It is not a grim diagnosis of life, but a gentle revelation of its fundamental rhythm, its sacred dance. Imagine standing on the bank of a great river. The water flows ceaselessly before you. You can never step into the same river twice, for the water that touches your feet one moment is gone the next, already on its journey to the sea, replaced by new water from the mountains. The river is a living, moving entity, defined not by stillness, but by its constant, unwavering flow. This is the nature of our lives. Everything we know, everything we are, is part of this magnificent, ever-changing river. Our bodies are not static objects, but processes. With every breath, millions of cells are born, and millions die. The person you were physically 7 years ago no longer exists, replaced entirely, piece by piece, in a quiet, continuous miracle of renewal. Our thoughts, our feelings, are even more fleeting. A wave of sadness washes over us, and for a moment, it feels all-encompassing, as if it will last forever, but it crests and breaks and recedes. A moment of joy alights in our heart, a beautiful butterfly, and it too, eventually, flies on. The world around us mirrors this dance. The sun rises and sets. The seasons turn, from the tender green shoots of spring to the stark, silent beauty of winter. Nothing is fixed. Everything is in a state of becoming. Life is not a noun, a thing to be possessed. It is a verb, an action, a flow, and yet, we spend so much of our energy resisting this fundamental truth. The source of so much of our deepest suffering, our dukkha, comes from this resistance. We try to build a permanent home on the banks of the flowing river, and then we are filled with anxiety when the waters inevitably rise and shift the ground beneath our feet. We fall in love with a particular arrangement of the water, a beautiful, sunlit eddy, and we try to hold it, to freeze it, in time. We cling to our youth, mourning its passing, as if it were a theft, rather than a natural, graceful transformation. We cling to moments of happiness, and in our very effort to make them last, we introduce a tension that sullies their simple beauty. We cling to our relationships, wanting them to remain exactly as they are, forgetting that love, too, is a living river that must be allowed to flow and change its course. This clinging, this grasping for permanence in a world where none exists, is like trying to capture the river's water by clenching your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers, and you are left with nothing but an aching, empty hand. The suffering is not in the change itself, but in our desperate, futile fight against it. There is a story that illustrates this with profound compassion. The story of a young mother named Kisa Gautami. She lived a happy life until her only son, just a toddler, fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small, lifeless body and carried him through her village, going from door to door, begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Some people turned away from her. Others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, a wise old man, seeing her unbearable pain, told her, "I cannot give you medicine for your child, but I know a physician who can. Go to the Buddha." Kisa Gautami rushed to find the enlightened one. She bowed before him, placed her son at his feet, and told him her story, her voice choked with desperation. "Can you help me? Can you give me the medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked upon her with infinite compassion. He did not tell her that her son was dead and that her quest was hopeless. He knew that her mind, shielded by grief, was not ready for such a direct truth. Instead, he gave her a task. He said, "Yes, I can help you, but first, you must bring me a single mustard seed. However, it must be taken from a house where no one has ever lost a loved one to death." Filled with a surge of hope, Kisa Gautami began her journey once more. She went to the first house, her heart pounding. "The Buddha has asked for a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son," she said. "Can you spare one?" The woman of the house replied, "Of course, we have plenty." But as she was about to give it, Kisa Gautami remembered the Buddha's condition. "I am so sorry," she asked, "but has anyone in this family ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, you remind me of our deepest sorrow. My husband died just last year." Kisa Gautami left without the seed and went to the next house. The people were kind, eager to help, but when she asked her question, the answer was the same. A daughter had been lost. An elderly parent had passed away. A brother was gone. She went from house to house, all through the village and into the next. At every single door, she was met with stories of loss. The living were few, she realized, but the dead were many. The personal, isolating agony of her grief began to dissolve. She saw that her pain was not hers alone. It was the shared inheritance of all humanity. Every family she met knew the same sorrow she felt. Her heart, once closed tight around her own tragedy, began to open with a vast, aching empathy for all beings. As evening fell, she sat by the side of the road, watching the flickering lights of the city below. They flared up, and then they died out. Flared up, and died out. In that simple observation, she saw the nature of all life. It arises, it shines for a time, and then it ceases. With this profound understanding, she finally accepted the truth of her son's death. She returned to the Buddha, not with the mustard seed, but with a quiet, peaceful heart. She had understood the great law of anicca, of impermanence. The Buddha had not given her a medicine to cure her son. He had given her the medicine to cure her own heart, the medicine of wisdom. This story is not a lesson in the inevitability of death, but in the freedom that comes from accepting the nature of life. When we cease our struggle against the river, we can finally begin to appreciate its beauty. When we understand that this moment, right now, will never come again in all of eternity, it becomes infinitely precious. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the taste of a simple glass of water, the sound of a loved one's voice, these are not mundane occurrences. They are unique, unrepeatable miracles. This understanding invites us not to despair, but to awaken. It asks us to be fully present for our lives, to cherish the beauty and the sorrow, the joy and the pain, knowing that all of it is part of the sacred flow. And with this new understanding, you can look at your own reflection with different eyes. You can see the lines on your face, the silver in your hair, the changes in your body, and you no longer need to see them as signs of decay. These are not failures. They are the map of your journey. Each line is a story of laughter, a lesson learned through tears, a testament to a life fully lived. They are the marks left by the river, proving that you have been a part of its powerful, beautiful, unstoppable current. You have not stood still. You have lived. To embrace impermanence is to let go of the exhausting burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. It is to find a deep and abiding peace in the midst of change. It is to learn to dance with the river instead of fighting it. And as we watch this ever-flowing river of our own experience, as we observe the changing currents of our body, our thoughts, and our feelings, we are naturally led to an even more profound question. If everything is in constant motion, if everything is changing from moment to moment, then where is the fixed, solid, unchanging I that is witnessing it all? This question guides us gently towards our next step, toward the liberating insight of letting go of the self and finding a freedom beyond anything we could have imagined. We have walked to the bank of the great river and recognized its ceaseless flow, the truth of impermanence. We have seen how our bodies, our thoughts, and the world itself are in a constant state of change. This leads us to a question that sits at the very core of human identity, a question that can feel unsettling at first, but holds the key to a profound and unshakable freedom. The question is this: if everything is changing, who is it that is doing the changing? Who is this I that experiences this flow? We spend our entire lives thinking, speaking, and acting from the perspective of this I. I am happy. I am sad. I am a mother. I was a wife. I need this. I fear that. This sense of self feels as solid and real as the ground beneath our feet. But the wisdom of Zen invites us to look closer, to investigate this feeling of I, not with suspicion, but with a gentle, open curiosity. When we do, we discover one of the most liberating truths. This solid, separate self, this ego we work so hard to protect and promote, is not what we think it is. In the language of the Buddha, this insight is called anatta, often translated as no self. This does not mean that you do not exist. You are here, breathing, listening. It means that you do not exist as a permanent, independent, unchanging entity. The self is not a thing, but a process. Let's look at how this self is constructed. If I were to ask you, who are you? What would your answer be? Perhaps you would say, I am a woman, unquote. Enter 4, part it is, enter 4, enter 4, enter 40, enter 4, 2 enter 4, enter 4. But your body is constantly changing. It is not the same as it was a decade ago, or even a moment ago. So are you your body? Perhaps you would say, I am my memories. But memories are selective. They fade. They can be inaccurate. They are fleeting electrical and chemical impulses in the brain. Are you really just a collection of memories? Perhaps you would define yourself by your roles. I am a mother, a grandmother, a friend. These are beautiful, important roles, but they are relationships, functions. When your children are grown and have their own families, your role as an active mother changes. When a friendship ends, the role changes. Are you defined only by your relationships to others? Perhaps you would point to your personality, your beliefs, your opinions. But have your opinions not changed over the course of your life? The convictions you held at 20 were likely different from those you held at 40, and different again from those you hold today. So if you are not your body, not your thoughts, not your emotions, not your roles, and not your memories, then what are you? The startling and freeing answer is that the I, the ego, is a temporary gathering of all these changing elements. It's like a story that the mind tells itself, weaving together these threads of body, feeling, thought, and memory to create a character, a protagonist we call me. It is a useful convention for navigating the world, but it is not a fixed, solid entity. It is a verb, not a noun. The profound suffering that many of us experience, especially in the later chapters of life, comes directly from mistaking this story for our true identity. For decades, a woman might identify herself with the role of mother. Her days are filled with caring for her children. Her purpose is deeply entwined with their well-being. It is a role of immense love and sacrifice. But then, the children grow up and leave home to build their own lives. The role, as she knew it, dissolves. If her entire identity was invested in being a mother, this change can feel like a kind of death, leaving a vast emptiness and a painful question: who am I now? Another woman might identify with her career. She was a teacher, a nurse, a manager. Her identity was tied to her competence, her responsibilities, her contributions. Then comes retirement. The title is gone. The daily structure is gone. The role is gone. And again, the hollow, frightening question arises: if I am not that, then who am I? We cling to these labels, these stories about ourselves, and when life, in its infinite, flowing wisdom, changes the story, we suffer. We are mistaking the costume for the actor. The wisdom of anatta shows us that we are not the costume. There is a famous dialogue from ancient Buddhist texts that makes this clear. The story of the sage Nagasena and the Greco-Bactrian king, Melinda. The king was a powerful ruler and a brilliant scholar, known for his love of debate. He had heard of the Buddhist teaching of no self and found it absurd. He went to meet the monk Nagasena, determined to defeat him in argument. Upon meeting, the king asked, "What is your name, venerable sir?" Nagasena replied, "I am known as Nagasena, your majesty, but this is only a designation, a name in common use. For in the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person to be found here." And so, the king, a sharp logician, smiled. If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes? Who eats, sleeps, and breathes? If I were to have you executed, there would be no one to be killed. You speak nonsense. The king then pointed to his own royal chariot, standing nearby. "Venerable sir, did you walk here, or did you arrive in a chariot?" "I came by chariot," Nagasena replied. "Excellent," said the king. "Then please, show me the chariot. Is the pole the chariot?" "No, your majesty," said Nagasena. "Are the wheels the chariot? Is the axle the chariot? Are the ropes, the frame, or the yoke the chariot?" To each question, Nagasena calmly answered, "No, your majesty." The king triumphantly declared, "Then you see, you speak of a chariot, but when we look for it, it cannot be found. The word chariot is just a sound, a lie. There is no chariot. It was then that the sage Nagasena gently turned the tables. He said, "Your Majesty, you are a great king, accustomed to every comfort. You say you came here in a chariot. If we ask, what is a chariot? Is it the wheels, the axle, the frame? You would say no. Is it all of these parts put together? Not exactly. Is it something separate from these parts? Number. Then, Your Majesty, where is the chariot?" The king was silent for a moment. And then, he understood. He acknowledged his defeat, realizing that chariot is simply the convenient name, the label we give to the functional assembly of all its parts. It has no separate, independent existence apart from its components. Nagasena then concluded, "Just so, Your Majesty. With what we call Nagasena, it is the name we give to this collection of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. In the ultimate sense, there is no separate self to be found, only this ever-changing, interdependent process of life unfolding. This is not a message of annihilation. It is a message of profound liberation. If you are not a fixed, solid thing, then you are not so easily broken. If your identity is not tied to a single role, you are free to inhabit many roles with grace and lightness. When someone praises you, it is pleasant, but it does not inflate you, because you know the you they are praising is just a temporary collection of conditions. When someone criticizes you or life deals you a difficult hand, it is painful, but it does not crush you, because you know the you that is being attacked is not a solid fortress, but a flowing river. This understanding grants an incredible flexibility and resilience. You can finally stop the exhausting, lifelong project of defending and polishing a fragile statue of me. You can relax. You can let go. When we release the tight grip of the ego, we realize we are not the small, isolated wave, but the entire ocean. The feeling is not one of emptiness, but of expansion. The energy we once used to maintain the borders of our small self is now freed. And when this energy is liberated, it naturally seeks to connect, to care, to understand. When the obsessive focus on my story, my pain, my desires begins to soften, we are able to truly see the world and the people in it for the first time. The walls come down. This is the natural arising of compassion. And as we will discover, this great compassion must begin its work in the one place we have so often judged and neglected, with our own being. Having touched the liberating wisdom of anatta, of no self, we find ourselves in a new landscape. The tight, defensive walls we built around the small story of me have begun to soften, to dissolve. An immense energy, once consumed by the endless project of self-preservation and self-definition, has been set free. The question that naturally arises is, where does this energy go? The answer is the very heart of the path. It flows into compassion. But before we can effectively extend compassion to the world, we must first direct it to the one place we have so often bypassed, judged, and neglected. We must direct it inward. We must learn the sacred art of self-compassion. There is a simple Zen saying that holds a universe of truth. You cannot pour from an empty teapot. For so many of you, for so many women who have been the primary caregivers, the nurturers, the emotional bedrock for your families and communities, this saying may strike a deep and perhaps uncomfortable chord. Your life has been an act of pouring. You have poured your love into your children, your energy into your home, your support into your partner, your care into your aging parents, your effort into your work. You have poured and poured until the pot is dry, until a deep exhaustion settles not just in your bones, but in your very spirit. And when you are empty, what is left to give? The practice of compassion, or karuna, does not begin with a demand to give more. It begins with a gentle invitation to replenish, to refill your own vessel. For many, the very idea of turning this care inward can feel selfish, indulgent, or even wrong. It is a testament to your generosity, but a habit that must be lovingly unlearned. To offer kindness to yourself is not selfish. It is the necessary foundation for all genuine kindness. It is the act of filling the teapot so that what you offer to others is not the bitter dregs of duty, but the warm, overflowing generosity of a full heart. The greatest obstacle to this replenishment is often a voice that lives inside us. It is the voice of the inner critic. It is a relentless commentator, a harsh judge who knows all of our perceived flaws and replays all of our past mistakes. This is the voice that whispers, "You should have done better." The voice that says, "You are not enough." The voice that looks in the mirror and sees only the wrinkles, the imperfections, the signs of time, and pronounces a verdict of failure. This internal dialogue of criticism, regret, and self-recrimination is a form of violence we commit against ourselves every single day. It is a toxic habit that drains our life force, perpetuates our anxiety, and makes true peace impossible. We would never speak to a beloved friend the way our inner critic speaks to us. Yet we allow this voice to be the constant soundtrack of our lives. The path of self-compassion does not try to violently silence this critic, for that is just more conflict. Instead, it does something far more radical and healing. It introduces a new voice, a voice of unconditional kindness and acceptance. This practice is known as metta, or loving kindness meditation. It is the antidote to the poison of the inner critic. So let us, for a moment, learn the language of this new voice. Find a comfortable position, and if you feel able, allow your eyes to gently close. Take a slow, deep breath, and as you exhale, let go of some of the tension in your shoulders, your jaw, your hands. Now, bring to mind an image of yourself. Perhaps you can picture yourself as a small child, innocent and vulnerable. Or perhaps you can simply get a felt sense of your own presence, sitting here, breathing. And now, we offer ourselves the phrases of metta, planting them like seeds in the soil of the heart. Repeat them silently after me, letting the intention behind the words be more important than the words themselves. May I be safe. May I be safe from all inner and outer harm, safe from the harshness of others, and safe from my own judgments. May I be happy. May I be truly happy. A deep and authentic well-being that does not depend on external conditions. May I be healthy. May I be healthy in my body, my mind, and my spirit. May all my parts, seen and unseen, function in harmony. May I live with ease. May I move through this world with grace and lightness, free from the heavy burden of constant struggle. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. Continue to whisper these words to yourself, to your own heart. It does not matter if you feel a great wave of emotion or if you feel nothing at all. The practice is in the gentle, patient repetition. It is the act of offering. You are tending to the garden of your own heart, a garden that may have been neglected for a very long time. You are watering the seeds of kindness. There is a story of the Buddha that shows the power of this kind of care in action. In his community of monks, there was a man who had contracted a terrible disease. His body was covered in painful, weeping sores, and the smell was so foul that no one would go near him. He lay alone in his own filth, abandoned in his suffering, because his brothers were disgusted and afraid. When the Buddha learned of this, he did not send a delegate. He went himself. He walked to the hut of the sick monk and without a word of judgment, he began to boil water. Then, with his own hands, the hands of the enlightened one, he began to gently wash the monk's wounded body, cleaning his sores, tending to his pain. He removed the soiled robes and gave him clean ones. When he was done, he gathered the other monks and spoke to them. "You have no mother or father here to look after you," he said. "If you do not look after each other, who will? Whoever tends to the sick and the suffering tends to me." This story is a profound teaching on compassion, and its most important application is for ourselves. We are all, in some way, that sick monk. We all have parts of ourselves that we have abandoned. We have wounds from our past, insecurities, feelings of shame, aspects of our personality or our history that we deem ugly or unworthy. These are our inner sores. We hide them away. We lie in our own self-judgment, and we refuse to go near these places within ourselves. Self-compassion is the act of being our own Buddha. It is the willingness to turn toward these wounded parts of ourselves with courage and tenderness. It is the act of gently washing our own wounds with the warm water of acceptance. It is tending to our own pain with the balm of non-judgmental awareness. It is looking at the most difficult parts of our own story and saying, "You belong too. I will care for you." This is the practice. To treat yourself in your moments of struggle, in your moments of failure, in your moments of pain, with the same kindness and care that you would offer to a dear friend. When a friend is hurting, you don't berate them. You offer a hand. You listen. You hold them in a space of love. We must learn to become this kind of friend to ourselves. When we practice this, something miraculous happens. The teapot begins to fill. The warmth of compassion, first cultivated for ourselves, naturally begins to overflow. It ceases to be an effort to be kind to others, because kindness has become the new habit of our heart. The love we have nurtured within does not stay contained. It radiates outward, effortlessly, touching our family, our friends, and even those we find difficult. Having learned to tend to the garden within, we are now ready to let its blossoms offer their fragrance to the entire world. Having learned to tend to the garden of our own heart, to water it with the gentle rain of self-compassion, we find that the garden begins to bloom. The teapot, once empty, is now full and warm. A profound shift begins to occur. The energy of kindness, no longer trapped in a cycle of self-criticism, naturally seeks to flow outward. This is the path of connection, the practice of opening the arms of the heart to embrace the entire world. This is the true antidote to the deep and pervasive loneliness that haunts our modern age. For loneliness, we discover, does not come from the fact of being alone, but from a feeling of being separate. It is the illusion of a wall between ourself and others. The practice of loving kindness, of metta, is the gentle and systematic dismantling of that wall, brick by brick. The journey begins where we left off, with the self. The first circle of warmth is the one we create for our own being. With our own cup full, we are now ready to extend this circle. First, bring to mind a beloved person. It could be a dear friend, a child or grandchild, a partner, or even a cherished pet. Picture them clearly in your mind's eye. See their smile. Feel the warmth of your affection for them. Now, extend the very same phrases of kindness you offered to yourself, to them. Silently, in your heart, wish for them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Feel the natural, effortless flow of goodwill. This part of the practice is usually easy. a confirmation of a love that is already present. It reminds us of our capacity for profound care. Now, we take a step further. We expand the circle to include a neutral person. Bring to mind someone you see regularly, but for whom you have no strong feelings, positive or negative. It might be the person who delivers your mail, a cashier at the grocery store, a neighbor you see, but don't know. Picture this person in your mind. You may not know their story, their struggles, or their joys, but you can know with certainty that they are a human being with a heart just like you. And so, you extend the same wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. In this simple act, something remarkable happens. The background characters in the play of our life suddenly step into the light. We see their humanity. The walls of indifference begin to crumble. We recognize a shared existence, a shared desire for well-being. This practice softens the edges of our world, transforming strangers into fellow travelers. The next step is the most challenging, and therefore the most transformative. We are asked to bring to mind a difficult person. It does not have to be someone who has caused you great harm, but simply a person with whom there is friction, irritation, or conflict. When you think of them, perhaps your body tenses, your heart closes. This is the moment of true practice. The invitation is not to condone their harmful actions or to pretend the difficulty doesn't exist. The invitation is to care for your own heart. Resentment, anger, and hatred are poisons that we drink, hoping the other person will suffer. This practice is the antidote taken for our own healing, recognizing that this person's harmful actions likely spring from their own deep suffering, their own unhappiness. We offer the phrases as a way to free ourselves from the chains of bitterness. With whatever small measure of willingness you can find, offer them the phrases, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. Wishing for a difficult person to be happy is one of the most radical and liberating acts we can perform. A truly happy, peaceful person does not cause harm to others. So this wish is a wish for the end of suffering, for them and for ourselves. It may feel artificial at first, but with practice, it can unburden the heart in miraculous ways. Finally, we let the circle become boundless. We picture the kindness flowing out from our heart, like light, touching everyone in our neighborhood, our city, our country. We extend it to all people on the planet, without exception. We extend it to the animals, to the plants, to all living beings. May all beings be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with ease. In this moment, we dissolve the illusion of separation and rest in a state of boundless, benevolent connection. The foundation of this entire practice rests upon a single, profound insight. Just like me, this person wishes to be happy. And just like me, this person wishes to be free from suffering. This simple truth is the great equalizer. It cuts through every superficial differencia, opinions, our beliefs, our backgrounds, our appearances. When we can look at another human being, whether a friend, a stranger, or an enemy, and see this fundamental, shared desire, a genuine connection becomes possible. Empathy is born. The heart opens. There is a powerful myth in Buddhism that embodies this spirit of boundless compassion. It is the story of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, known in other traditions as Kuan Theon or Kuan Yin. Avalokiteshvara made a vow not to enter final nirvana until every single being in every realm was liberated from suffering. With this immense resolve, he looked out upon the world and listened to its cries. But the sheer, overwhelming, infinite scope of the world's suffering was too much to bear. His heart broke, and his head shattered into 11 pieces. His body split into 1,000 fragments. Seeing this ultimate act of compassionate effort, the Buddhas of all directions came to his aid. They gathered the broken pieces and reformed him into a new, magnificent body. He now had 11 heads to see the suffering in all directions, and 1,000 hands to reach out and help. And in the palm of each of his 1,000 hands, there was an eye, symbolizing that true compassion is always guided by wisdom. This story is a metaphor for our own potential. We do not need to literally grow 1,000 hands. The practice of expanding loving kindness is how we cultivate our own 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. We begin to see the subtle signs of suffering in those around us that we previously ignored, and we find countless ways to offer a hand. Often, the most powerful of these 1,000 hands is not one that does anything at all, but one that simply offers the gift of listening. This is the practice of deep, compassionate listening. It is to offer another person the entirety of our attention, without judgment, without interruption, without planning our reply. We listen not to fix them, but to feel them. We listen to understand. To give someone the space to be seen and heard in this way is an act of profound love. It is a quiet way of saying, "You matter. Your experience is valid. I am here with you." It is one of the greatest gifts we can offer from our overflowing pot. Compassion and wisdom are the two wings of a bird. Both are needed to fly. As we have opened our hearts with the practice of compassion, we see the necessity of wisdom to guide our efforts. To truly help ourselves and others be free from suffering, we must understand its nature more deeply. We must look it in the eye, not with fear, but with the clear, steady gaze of a physician. This leads us directly to the Buddha's first and most fundamental teaching, the compassionate diagnosis of our shared condition, the truth of what is known as dukkha. To heal an ailment, we must first be willing to understand it. Having opened our hearts to the world with boundless compassion, guided by the 1,000-eyed wisdom of Avalokiteshvara, we now turn that wisdom to the most fundamental question of our human lives. To truly alleviate suffering, we must first understand it, not as a philosophical problem, but as a lived experience. This brings us to the very foundation of the Buddha's teaching, his first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. The word dukkha is often translated from the ancient Pali language as suffering, but this translation can be misleading. It sounds heavy, pessimistic, as if it were a final judgment on the value of life. This is not the intent at all. A more helpful and accurate way to understand dukkha is as a pervasive, underlying sense of unsatisfactoriness. It is a subtle dis-ease, a low-grade friction, the feeling that things are somehow out of joint, not quite right. It is not a declaration that life is bad, but a compassionate and realistic diagnosis of the human condition before we awaken to a new way of seeing. To grasp its full meaning, it helps to see that dukkha manifests in three interconnected ways. The first is the most obvious, the dukkha of plain and simple pain. This is the suffering of a headache, the ache in our joints, the grief of losing a loved one, the sting of a harsh word, the anxiety that keeps us awake at night. It is the undeniable pain, both physical and emotional, that is an inescapable part of having a human body and a human heart. No one is immune to this level of dukkha. This is the first arrow. The second form of dukkha is more subtle. It is the dukkha of change. This is the unsatisfactoriness that arises because even pleasant things do not last. We enjoy a wonderful meal, but eventually the plate is empty. We have a joyful gathering with family, but eventually everyone must go home. We experience a moment of perfect peace, watching a sunset, but the sun inevitably sinks below the horizon. The very happiness of these moments contains the seed of its own passing. There is a subtle anxiety in clinging to pleasure, knowing that it is as fleeting as a dream. We are trying to hold on to a beautiful bubble, and the very act of grasping it ensures that it will pop. This suffering comes not from the experience itself, but from our resistance to its impermanent nature. The third and most profound level is the dukkha of conditioned existence. This is the deep, background hum of dissatisfaction that is woven into the very fabric of our ordinary, unexamined lives. It is the feeling of being a separate, fragile self in a world of constant change. It is the subtle stress of always needing to maintain ourselves, to defend our opinions, to shore up our identity. It is that vague, persistent feeling that something is missing, that nagging question of, is this all there is? It is the inherent friction of being a finite being in an infinite world. This is the foundational dis-ease that the path seeks to heal. So where does this pervasive unsatisfactoriness come from? It is generated by a fundamental mechanism of the mind, a relentless process of sorting and reacting. As we move through the world, our mind constantly encounters experiences, and, like a tireless clerk, it stamps each one, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Life itself is simply the flow of these experiences. The dukkha arises not from the experiences, but from our reaction to the stamp. When a pleasant experience arrives a sweet taste, a word of praise, a moment of comfort, the mind immediately reacts with craving, with a grasping desire that says, I like this, I want more of this, don't let this end. When an unpleasant experience arrives a criticism, a physical pain, a difficult memory, the mind reacts with aversion, a forceful pushing away that says, I hate this, get it away from me. I don't want this. This constant pulling of what we want and pushing of what we don't want creates a state of perpetual inattention, a war against the natural flow of life. We are in a constant struggle with reality, and this struggle is exhausting. The Buddha told a simple story to illustrate the freedom that is possible when we understand this mechanism. He said that if a person is struck by an arrow, it is painful. If that person is then struck by a second arrow in the exact same spot, it is even more painful. He then explained that in life, we cannot always control the first arrow. Sickness, loss, accidents, old age, these are the first arrows of existence. They are painful, and they are, to a large extent, unavoidable. They are the objective reality of our lives. However, the second arrow is one that we shoot at ourselves. The first arrow strikes, and there is pain. The second arrow is our reaction to the pain. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. The first arrow is a difficult medical diagnosis. The second arrow is the thought, my life is over. I can't bear this. Why me? The first arrow is a moment of loneliness. The second arrow is the story, I am unlovable. I will be alone forever. The first arrow is a physical pain in the body. The second arrow is the fear and anxiety we layer on top of it. The constant mental commentary about how terrible it is. The pain of the first arrow is inevitable, but the suffering of the second arrow, in anger, the resentment, the self-pity, the fear is optional. We do not have to inflict this extra, unnecessary torment upon ourselves. The entire spiritual path can be seen as the practice of learning not to shoot the second arrow. This does not mean we become emotionless robots. or that we don't feel the pain of the first arrow. We feel it fully, but we learn to hold that pain with a spacious, compassionate awareness, rather than reacting with a storm of mental proliferation. We learn to change our relationship with discomfort. We see that the key to our freedom lies not in trying to create a life free from first arrow-san impossible task, but in cultivating the wisdom to refrain from firing the second. This insight is profoundly empowering. It shifts us from being a passive victim of our circumstances to being an active participant in our own liberation. The problem is not the pain. The problem is our reaction to the pain. This understanding of the second arrow gives us the key to working with all of our difficult emotions. We see that they are not the primary event, but a secondary reaction, a form of energy that we can learn to meet with mindfulness instead of unconscious reactivity. And one of the most powerful, fiery, and sharpest second arrows that we so often shoot at ourselves and others is the energy of anger. And so, our journey now takes us directly into the heart of this fire, to discover not how to suppress its flames, but how to transform its intense heat into the warmth of wisdom and the light of compassion. Having understood dukkha as the friction of our resistance to life, and the second arrow as the suffering we inflict upon ourselves through our reactions, we now turn our attention to one of the most powerful, fiery, and volatile of all second arrows, the emotion of anger. Anger is a universal experience. It can rise like a flash fire, consuming our reason and leaving a trail of regret and broken connection in its wake. For many of us, our entire lives have been spent wrestling with this powerful energy in one of two unskillful ways. The first is suppression. We are taught that anger is a negative, unspiritual, or impolite emotion. So when it arises, we deny it, we swallow it, we stuff it down into the basement of our consciousness, pretending it isn't there. But suppressed anger does not disappear. It curdles within us, turning into resentment, bitterness, depression, or even physical illness. The second unskillful way is explosion. We identify completely with the anger, becoming its mindless puppet. We lash out with harsh words or actions, venting the pressure, but often causing irreparable harm to others and to ourselves. Both of these paths lead to more suffering. Zen, however, offers a third way. It is not a path of suppression or explosion, but a path of transformation. To walk this third path, we must first change our view of anger itself. We must stop seeing it as an enemy to be vanquished. Anger is not inherently bad. It is simply energy. It is an immense, powerful, and potent form of energy. Think of it like fire. A wild, uncontrolled fire can burn down a village, but a fire contained within a hearth can cook our food, warm our home, and provide light in the darkness. The problem is not the fire itself, but our relationship to it. Our practice is to learn how to mindfully contain the fire of anger so that we can use its energy for understanding and transformation rather than for destruction. This begins with removing the second arrow of judging ourselves for feeling angry. It is okay that anger is here. It is a natural human emotion. Our task is not to eliminate it, but to learn how to care for it. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offers a beautiful and profound analogy for this practice. He teaches us to treat our anger like a crying baby. When a baby cries, a good mother does not ignore it or lock it in the basement, nor does she scream at it for being loud and disruptive. To do so would be cruel and senseless. Instead, she immediately stops what she is doing, goes to the baby, and picks it up tenderly. She holds the baby, embracing it with her warmth. This is the first step: mindful recognition and acceptance. When the fire of anger arises, we stop. We turn inward, and we metaphorically pick it up. We acknowledge its presence without judgment. We can say to ourselves, breathing in, I know that anger is here. Breathing out, I will take good care of my anger. We greet it, almost as an old friend. Hello, my little anger. I see you. I am here for you. This simple act of recognition, of holding our anger in the warm embrace of our mindfulness, immediately changes our relationship to it. We are no longer its victim, nor its perpetrator. We have become its caretaker. As the mother holds her crying baby, her embrace alone begins to soothe it. Her next step is to listen deeply, to try to understand why the baby is crying. Is it hungry? Is its diaper wet? Is it frightened or in pain? She looks deeply to understand the baby's needs. In the same way, once we are holding our anger with mindfulness, we must learn to listen to it. Anger is very often a secondary emotion. It is a loud, protective shield for something much more soft and vulnerable underneath. When we look deeply into the heart of our anger, what do we find? Usually, we find hurt. Someone's words or actions have pierced our heart, and the anger is our defense. Or perhaps we find fear. Our sense of safety or security has been threatened, and anger rushes in to protect us. Or perhaps we find a profound sense of injustice. We see something happening that is deeply wrong, and anger arises as a cry for fairness. It can also be a mask for helplessness, a feeling of powerlessness in a situation we cannot control. When we can look past the fiery, noisy surface of our anger and touch the vulnerable feeling beneath it, the hurt, the fear, the helplessness, the anger's job is done. It has delivered its message. It has brought our attention to a place within us that is wounded and needs care. And by simply recognizing this underlying cause, by seeing, this anger is here because I feel deeply hurt, the energy of the anger naturally begins to calm down. The mother has understood why the baby is crying, and she can now give it what it needs, not a fight, but comfort. Understanding is the water that cools the flames. It is the beginning of true transformation. This practice requires us to create a space between the spark of anger and our reaction. This is where the practice of mindfulness in daily life becomes our greatest ally. Thich Nhat Hanh often spoke of using a bell as a reminder to come back to the present moment. He called this the bell of mindfulness. But we don't need a physical bell. Anything can be our bell. The ringing of the telephone, the red light at an intersection, the song of a bird, or most reliably, our own breath. We can make an agreement with ourselves that the moment we feel the heat of anger begin to rise, we will stop. We will not speak. We will not act. We will simply come back to our breathing for 3 full, conscious in-breaths and out-breaths. Imagine you are in a difficult conversation. The other person says something that triggers you. You feel the flash of heat, the tightening in your chest, the impulse to lash out. This is the critical moment. Instead of immediately speaking, you pause. You breathe in, I know anger is here. You breathe out, I am holding my anger with tenderness. You breathe in, I know my anger comes from a place of hurt. You breathe out, I am listening to my hurt. You breathe in, I am creating space around this feeling. You breathe out, I can choose how to respond. This pause, this small gap of just 3 breaths, is a holy space. It is the space of freedom. Without this space, we are a machine, an automaton of reaction. The button gets pushed, and we explode. But with this space, we reclaim our humanity. We give ourselves the gift of choice. We can choose not to pour more fuel on the fire. We can choose to speak from the place of our hurt, rather than the place of our anger. We can say, "When you said that, it made me feel hurt," instead of, "You are a terrible person." The difference in outcome is immeasurable. One path leads to more conflict. The other leads to the possibility of understanding and healing. Learning to care for our anger is not a practice of weakness. It is a practice of profound strength and wisdom. It is the courage to stay present with a powerful energy without being carried away by it. It is the compassion to embrace our own inner child when it is crying out in pain. As we learn to sit with the fire of anger, we discover that we do not have to be burned by it. Instead, we can become the alchemist who transforms its raw, destructive heat into the radiant warmth of compassion and the clear light of understanding. This same skill, this ability to stay present with intensity, is needed when we face another deep and powerful emotion. For just as we must learn to be with fire, we must also learn to be with water, the quiet, deep, and sometimes overwhelming currents of sadness and loss. Our journey now leads us into these waters, to learn not how to build a dam against them, but to discover the precious lotus that can only grow in their depths. Having learned to sit with the fire of anger, to hold its energy with mindful care until it transforms into the warmth of understanding, we now turn to its quieter, cooler sister, the deep water of sadness. While anger often erupts, demanding attention, sadness can be a quiet, persistent current, a vast and silent ocean beneath the surface of our days. In our society, we are often taught to fear these waters. We are told to be strong, to keep a stiff upper lip, to move on. We see sadness as a sign of weakness, a problem to be fixed, a mood to be medicated or distracted away. We are taught to present a brave face to the world, even when our heart is breaking. This conditioning, while well-intentioned, is a form of self-abandonment. The path of wisdom does not ask us to avoid sadness. It invites us to do something far more courageous, to be willing to feel it, to walk through it, and to discover the unexpected strength that is found only in our own vulnerability. Sadness is not a mistake. It is an intelligent, natural, and profoundly healthy response to loss. To feel sadness is to honor what we have loved. We grieve because we have cared. We feel the ache of loss precisely because our hearts have been open. If we had never loved, we would never know sorrow. Therefore, to push sadness away, to deny its existence, is to dishonor the very love that gave it birth. It is to close the door on a vital part of our own humanity. As we navigate the later seasons of our life, these encounters with loss become more frequent. We may grieve the passing of parents, partners, and friends. We may feel a sadness for the loss of our youth, for the changing abilities of our bodies. We may experience a sense of loss for the roles that once defined us, as our children build their own independent lives. To deny the legitimacy of this sadness is to create a deep fracture within ourselves. It is like trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. It takes an enormous and constant expenditure of energy, and eventually, inevitably, it will spring to the surface with unexpected and uncontrollable force. The practice of mindfulness offers a different way, a path of gentle allowance rather than forceful resistance. The practice of being with sadness is not the same as wallowing in it. Wallowing is getting lost in the story of our sadness. The second arrows of, "My life is ruined. I will never be happy again." This is unbearable. Being mindfully present with sadness is about gently disconnecting from the story and connecting with the raw physical sensation of the emotion itself. When a wave of sadness arises, the invitation is to pause, to close your eyes, and to ask, "Where do I feel this in my body?" Perhaps you feel a heaviness in your chest, a weight on your shoulders. Perhaps it's a hollow, empty feeling in your stomach, or a lump forming in your throat. Without judging these sensations or wishing they were different, simply bring your awareness to them. Let your attention rest there, as if you were placing a warm, gentle hand on that part of your body. Then, you bring your breath to this place. You breathe with the sensation. Breathing in, you acknowledge, there is a feeling of heaviness in my chest. Breathing out, you offer it space. You soften around it. The breath becomes a form of gentle, internal companionship. You are not trying to breathe the sadness away. You are simply breathing with it. You are letting it know that you are here, that you are not going to abandon it. In this way, sadness is not an enemy to be fought, but a visitor to be received with quiet hospitality. It often comes in waves. A memory or a thought can trigger a wave of deep sorrow. The practice is to be like a stable, sandy shore, allowing the wave to wash over you, to feel its full intensity, and to trust that it will recede, as all waves do. By staying with the physical sensations, we anchor ourselves in the present moment and are less likely to be swept out to sea by the powerful currents of the story. There is no more powerful symbol for this transformative process in all of Buddhism than the lotus flower. Picture it in your mind. It floats on the surface of the pond, its petals pristine and radiant, opening to the sun in perfect beauty. It is an image of purity, awakening, and spiritual grace. But the secret of the lotus is not in its blossom. The secret of the lotus lies in where it grows. Its roots are not in pure, clean water. The lotus has its roots deep in the dark, smelly, murky mud at the very bottom of the pond. It is from the thickest, ugliest mud that the most beautiful flower emerges. The great master, Thich Nhat Hanh, summarized this profound truth in a simple phrase: no mud, no lotus. This teaching is a gift. It tells us that we cannot have the beauty of the flower without the mess of the mud. The mud is not an unfortunate obstacle to be overcome. The mud is the very source of the nutrients that allow the lotus to grow. And so it is with our lives, our difficulties, our losses, our heartaches, our tears. This is our mud. We are conditioned to hate our mud, to be ashamed of it, to try and hide it or get rid of it as quickly as possible. We want the lotus without the mud, but this is impossible. The wisdom of Zen invites us to completely reframe our relationship with our own mud. It asks us to see that our sadness, when met with the light of mindful awareness, is the very fertilizer for our own spiritual growth. The experience of profound loss, when we have the courage to stay with it, is precisely what carves out a greater capacity for compassion in our hearts. The tears we cry for what is gone water the soil of our being, allowing a deeper wisdom to take root, a wisdom about the precious, fragile, and sacred nature of life itself. From the mud of our deepest sorrows can bloom the lotus of a new understanding, a new tenderness, a new appreciation for the bittersweet beauty of this human journey. We do not need to be afraid of our own sadness. We do not need to judge it as a weakness or a failure. It is a sign of our ability to love. By learning to walk through these deep waters with gentle, non-judgmental presence, we discover a strength, not of armor, but of water itself, a strength that is soft, yielding, and ultimately unconquerable. We find that our vulnerability is our greatest power. Having learned to be present for the fire of anger and the water of sadness, and having found the hidden wisdom within both, a new quality of the heart begins to shine through the clouds. It is a quiet sense of appreciation, not just for the good times, but for the whole, complex, messy, muddy, and magnificent journey of our lives. This brings us naturally to the practice of actively cultivating this healing state, the practice of gratitude. We now turn our attention to learning how to see the countless, simple gifts that are offered to us in every single moment. Having walked through the fire of anger and journeyed through the deep waters of sadness, we emerge onto new ground. We have learned that our difficult emotions, when met with mindfulness, are not our enemies but our teachers. They are the mud from which the lotus of wisdom can grow. And as this lotus begins to bloom, a new fragrance naturally fills the air of our hearts. It is the fragrance of appreciation, of thankfulness for the whole complex journey. This brings us to the active and intentional practice of cultivating gratitude. This is not merely about saying thank you as a social courtesy. It is a profound spiritual practice, a conscious retraining of the mind to shift its focus from what is missing in our lives to the vast, overlooked abundance of what is already here. To understand why gratitude is a practice that requires cultivation, we must first understand the default setting of the human mind. Our brains are hardwired with something called a negativity bias. For our ancient ancestors, this was an essential survival tool. The one who spent their time admiring the beautiful flowers was less likely to survive than the one who was constantly scanning the bushes for the rustle of a predator. To ensure our survival, the brain became like Velcro for negative experiences and like Teflon for positive ones. A single criticism can stick with us all day, while a dozen compliments slide right off. We are masters at noticing what is wrong, what is broken, what is missing, and what could be a threat. This ancient survival mechanism, in our modern world, often creates a background hum of anxiety, dissatisfaction, and complaint. The mind is always looking for a problem to solve, and if it can't find a big one, it will happily magnify a small one. The practice of gratitude is the conscious and deliberate counter-practice to this default mode. It is the intentional act of turning our attention away from the weeds and toward the flowers. Modern science has shown us something remarkable, a concept known as neuroplasticity. This means that our repeated thoughts and actions can literally change the physical structure and wiring of our brain. Imagine your mind is a forest. The path of negative thinking, of worry, complaint, and dissatisfaction is a wide, well-worn highway. It's easy to travel down this road because it has been used for decades. The path of gratitude, on the other hand, may be just a tiny, overgrown trail. The first time you try to walk it, it might feel difficult and unnatural. But every time you consciously choose to feel a moment of gratitude, you are walking that path. You are taming the weeds, clearing the branches. With consistent practice, that small trail becomes a clear footpath, then a comfortable lane, and eventually a new, wide, and welcoming highway. You are literally rewiring your brain for happiness. So how do we walk this new path? We do it with simple, consistent, daily practice. It begins by setting an intention to notice. We can create a small ritual, perhaps upon waking in the morning, or just before we fall asleep at night. We can simply lie quietly and bring to mind 3 to 5 things for which we are grateful. At first, it may feel strange, but the key is to start with the most simple, most fundamental gifts that we so often take for granted. You can begin with your own body. You might bring your attention to your breath and feel a sense of gratitude for this constant, faithful companion that has been with you every moment of your life, asking nothing in return. Breathing in, I am aware of my breath. Breathing out, I am grateful for my breath. You might feel gratitude for your feet, which have carried you through a lifetime of steps. You might feel gratitude for your hands, which have allowed you to work, to create, to cook, to hold the hands of those you love. You can feel gratitude for your eyes that see and your ears that hear. Even if the body is in pain, even if it is aging, it is still the precious vehicle that allows you to experience this world. Then you can expand your awareness outward. Feel gratitude for the roof over your head that keeps you safe and dry. Feel gratitude for the clean water that is available at the turn of a tap. Feel gratitude for the food you have to eat. Billions of people on this planet do not have these basic securities. To recognize them is to recognize our immense good fortune. Feel gratitude for the simple miracle of sunlight warming your skin, or the sound of rain falling outside your window. Feel gratitude for a comfortable chair, a warm blanket, a cup of tea. The practice is to look for the magic in what has become mundane. There is a simple story of an old Zen master who embodied this state of being. A young, restless novice in the monastery was always complaining. He found the weather too hot or too cold, the chores too difficult, the meditation too boring. He noticed the oldest monk in the community had a strange habit. Every single morning, this old master would open the door of his hut, look at the sky, take a deep breath, and say, with a genuine, heartfelt smile, "Ah, what a wonderful day." The novice saw him do this on beautiful, sunny days, which was understandable. But he also saw him do it on bitterly cold days, on sweltering days, and even during torrential rainstorms. One morning, during a particularly miserable storm with cold, driving rain and howling winds, the young monk could not contain his cynicism any longer. He watched as the old master opened his door and, as always, exclaimed with pure delight, "Ah, what a wonderful day." The novice approached him. "Master," he said, "how can you possibly call this a wonderful day? It's cold and wet and utterly miserable." The old master looked at the young man, his eyes filled with a deep, compassionate wisdom. He smiled and said, "Young man, it is a wonderful day because I am alive in it. The weather is merely the weather. The wonder is the life that is here to experience it. This is the fruit of a grateful heart. It is a joy that is not dependent on conditions being perfect. It is a fundamental orientation of thankfulness for the sheer, raw, unearned gift of being alive. When we practice gratitude, we shift our entire world from one of scarcity to one of abundance. We stop focusing on what we don't have, and we begin to truly see the incredible richness of what we do have. This is the gateway to a deep and abiding joy, a contentment that is not based on the fleeting pleasure of getting what we want, but on the profound peace of appreciating what is already here. When our own heart is filled with this quiet, steady joy born from gratitude, something beautiful happens in our relationship with the world. We cease to see life as a competition. The success and happiness of others no longer feel like a threat or a reminder of our own lack. Instead, with a heart full of abundance, we find that we can genuinely rejoice in their good fortune. This capacity to feel joy for the joy of others is a sublime and heart-opening practice, a virtue known in Buddhism as mudita. And it is to this practice of sympathetic joy that we now turn our attention. Having filled our hearts with the quiet joy of gratitude, learning to appreciate the simple gifts of our own lives, we are now ready to take another step toward a truly open and boundless heart. This step addresses one of the most subtle and persistent sources of unhappiness in modern life: the poison of comparison. From a young age, we are taught to measure ourselves against our grades, our achievements, our appearance, our possessions. In today's world, this habit is amplified 1,000 times over as we scroll through curated images of other people's seemingly perfect lives. This constant measuring, this relentless game of comparison, is the thief of joy. It creates a prison of isolation, guaranteeing that we are never quite enough. The wisdom of Zen offers a key to unlock this prison, a powerful antidote to the poison of envy and comparison. It is the practice of mudita, which can be translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the radical and beautiful capacity to feel genuine happiness for the happiness of others. Let us first look closely at the prison of comparison. It is a game in which it is impossible to win. When we compare ourselves to others, there are only two potential outcomes, and both lead to suffering. If we look at someone and perceive that we are better, off, more successful, more fortunate, more enlightened, it can give rise to a fleeting sense of pride or arrogance. But this feeling is fragile, built on a sense of superiority, and it creates a subtle separation between us and others. It is an unstable ground, and we live in quiet fear of losing our superior position. The second outcome is far more common. We look at others and perceive that they are better off. We see their happy relationships, their successful careers, their beautiful homes, their talented children. In that moment, a familiar pang arises in our heart. It is the sting of envy, of resentment, of feeling that we are lacking. Their happiness, instead of adding to the world's joy, feels like it diminishes our own. This mindset locks us into a world of scarcity, as if happiness were a limited resource that we must compete for. It is a profoundly lonely and painful way to live, creating invisible walls of resentment between us and our fellow human beings. Mudita offers a revolutionary alternative. It invites us to step out of this lose-lose game entirely. Mudita is the sincere and selfless joy that arises when we witness the good fortune of another. It is the opposite of envy. It is the heart's ability to celebrate a victory even when it isn't our own. This practice is considered one of the 4 divine abodes, or limitless states of heart, because it opens up an infinite wellspring of joy that is not dependent on our own personal circumstances. Our own personal moments of triumph may be few and far between, but every single day, all around us, good things are happening to other people. Someone gets a promotion they've worked hard for. A couple falls in love. A family welcomes a new child. A neighbor's garden blooms beautifully. Someone recovers from an illness. If our joy is limited only to our own personal victories, our opportunities for happiness are scarce. But if we can learn to share in the joy of others, our opportunities for happiness become endless. We are no longer an isolated island, but part of a vast continent of shared human experience. The practice of mudita breaks down the walls of isolation and allows us to participate in the vast collective joy of the world. The actual practice of mudita is simple and can be done at any moment. It begins with mindfulness. The next time you are out in the world and you witness a moment of happiness, perhaps you see a young couple laughing together, or you hear a friend share some good news. The first step is to notice your own initial reaction. Is there a small pang of envy? A thought of, why not me? Simply notice this without judging yourself. It is a deeply ingrained habit. The second step is to consciously and intentionally make the shift. Take a gentle breath, and in the quiet of your own heart, offer them a sincere wish. You can say to yourself, "How wonderful for you. I am so happy that you are happy. May your joy and success continue." You are consciously choosing to celebrate their good fortune. You are aligning your heart with their happiness. It may feel mechanical at first, but with practice, this intentional shift becomes more and more natural, rewiring the very pathways of your heart from envy to appreciative joy. There is a timeless story told in the East that perfectly illustrates the difference between a heart closed by envy and a heart opened by shared joy. A spiritual seeker asked to be shown the difference between heaven and hell. First, he was taken to a great hall that represented hell. In the center of the hall was a large round table laden with the most delicious and fragrant foods imaginable. Seated around the table were many people, yet they were all emaciated, weeping, and in a state of utter misery. The seeker soon saw why. To eat the food, each person had been given a pair of chopsticks that were 3 feet long. While they could easily reach the food on the table, the chopsticks were too long to bring the food back to their own mouths. Their torment was to be surrounded by abundance while starving in frustration. Next, the seeker was taken to another hall, the one representing heaven. To his astonishment, it was identical. The same round table, the same magnificent feast, the same people, and the same 3-foot-long chopsticks. Yet here, the people were plump, laughing, and filled with joy and satisfaction. The seeker was puzzled until he looked closer and discovered their secret. In heaven, the people were not trying to feed themselves. They were using their long chopsticks to reach across the table and feed the person sitting opposite them. In turn, they were being fed by those across the table. In hell, the selfish focus on me led to starvation and misery. In heaven, the compassionate focus on we led to abundance, nourishment, and shared joy. This is the very essence of mudita. The long chopsticks are our lives. When we are obsessed only with our own happiness, we often find it just out of our reach, leaving us in a state of frustration, our private hell. But when we learn to find joy in nourishing others, in celebrating their happiness, we discover that we too are nourished. Our own happiness becomes a beautiful side effect of wishing for the happiness of others. We step out of the lonely prison of comparison and into the joyful feast of our shared humanity. When the heart is filled with loving kindness for all, deep compassion for the suffering, and this sympathetic joy for the happiness of others, it becomes a truly beautiful and powerful force. However, such a wide-open heart, in its great sensitivity, can sometimes become overwhelmed or exhausted. It needs a stabilizing element, a calm center in the midst of the storm of life. This brings us to the fourth and final of these divine abodes, the quality that holds and balances all the others. This is the profound practice of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the peaceful mountain that allows us to love deeply and carefully, without losing our balance in the ever-changing winds of the world. And it is to this unshakable peace that we now turn. Having filled our hearts with the quiet joy of gratitude, learning to appreciate the simple gifts of our own lives, we are now ready to take another step toward a truly open and boundless heart. This step addresses one of the most subtle and persistent sources of unhappiness in modern life: the poison of comparison. From a young age, we are taught to measure ourselves against others' our grades, our achievements, our appearance, our possessions. In today's world, this habit is amplified 1,000 times over as we scroll through curated images of other people's seemingly perfect lives. This constant measuring, this relentless game of comparison, is the thief of joy. It creates a prison of isolation, guaranteeing that we are never quite enough. The wisdom of Zen offers a key to unlock this prison, a powerful antidote to the poison of envy and comparison. It is the practice of mudita, which can be translated as sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the radical and beautiful capacity to feel genuine happiness for the happiness of others. Let us first look closely at the prison of comparison. It is a game in which it is impossible to win. When we compare ourselves to others, there are only two potential outcomes, and both lead to suffering. If we look at someone and perceive that we are better, off, more successful, more fortunate, more enlightened, it can give rise to a fleeting sense of pride or arrogance. But this feeling is fragile, built on a sense of superiority, and it creates a subtle separation between us and others. It is an unstable ground, and we live in quiet fear of losing our superior position. The second outcome is far more common. We look at others and perceive that they are better off. We see their happy relationships, their successful careers, their beautiful homes, their talented children. In that moment, a familiar pang arises in our heart. It is the sting of envy, of resentment, of feeling that we are lacking. Their happiness, instead of adding to the world's joy, feels like it diminishes our own. This mindset locks us into a world of scarcity, as if happiness were a limited resource that we must compete for. It is a profoundly lonely and painful way to live, creating invisible walls of resentment between us and our fellow human beings. Mudita offers a revolutionary alternative. It invites us to step out of this lose-lose game entirely. Mudita is the sincere and selfless joy that arises when we witness the good fortune of another. It is the opposite of envy. It is the heart's ability to celebrate a victory, even when it isn't our own. This practice is considered one of the 4 divine abodes, or limitless states of heart, because it opens up an infinite wellspring of joy that is not dependent on our own personal circumstances. Our own personal moments of triumph may be few and far between, but every single day, all around us, good things are happening to other people. Someone gets a promotion they've worked hard for. A couple falls in love. A family welcomes a new child. A neighbor's garden blooms beautifully. Someone recovers from an illness. If our joy is limited only to our own personal victories, our opportunities for happiness are scarce. But if we can learn to share in the joy of others, our opportunities for happiness become endless. We are no longer an isolated island, but part of a vast continent of shared human experience. The practice of mudita breaks down the walls of isolation and allows us to participate in the vast, collective joy of the world. The actual practice of mudita is simple and can be done at any moment. It begins with mindfulness. The next time you are out in the world and you witness a moment of happiness, perhaps you see a young couple laughing together, or you hear a friend share some good news. The first step is to notice your own initial reaction. Is there a small pang of envy? A thought of, why not me? Simply notice this without judging yourself. It is a deeply ingrained habit. The second step is to consciously and intentionally make the shift. Take a gentle breath and in the quiet of your own heart, offer them a sincere wish. You can say to yourself, how wonderful for you. I am so happy that you are happy. May your joy and success continue. You are consciously choosing to celebrate their good fortune. You are aligning your heart with their happiness. It may feel mechanical at first, but with practice, this intentional shift becomes more and more natural, rewiring the very pathways of your heart from envy to appreciative joy. There is a timeless story told in the East that perfectly illustrates the difference between a heart closed by envy and a heart opened by shared joy. A spiritual seeker asked to be shown the difference between heaven and hell. First, he was taken to a great hall that represented hell. In the center of the hall was a large, round table laden with the most delicious and fragrant foods imaginable. Seated around the table were many people, yet they were all emaciated, weeping, and in a state of utter misery. The seeker soon saw why. To eat the food, Each person had been given a pair of chopsticks that were 3 feet long. While they could easily reach the food on the table, the chopsticks were too long to bring the food back to their own mouths. Their torment was to be surrounded by abundance, while starving in frustration. Next, the seeker was taken to another hall, the one representing heaven. To his astonishment, it was identical. The same round table, the same magnificent feast, the same people, and the same 3-foot-long chopsticks. Yet here, the people were plump, laughing, and filled with joy and satisfaction. The seeker was puzzled until he looked closer and discovered their secret. In heaven, the people were not trying to feed themselves. They were using their long chopsticks to reach across the table and feed the person sitting opposite them. In turn, they were being fed by those across the table. In hell, the selfish focus on me led to starvation and misery. In heaven, the compassionate focus on we led to abundance, nourishment, and shared joy. This is the very essence of mudita. The long chopsticks are our lives. When we are obsessed only with our own happiness, we often find it just out of our reach, leaving us in a state of frustration, a private hell. But when we learn to find joy in nourishing others, in celebrating their happiness, we discover that we too are nourished. Our own happiness becomes a beautiful side effect of wishing for the happiness of others. We step out of the lonely prison of comparison and into the joyful feast of our shared humanity. When the heart is filled with loving kindness for all, deep compassion for the suffering, and this sympathetic joy for the happiness of others, it becomes a truly beautiful and powerful force. However, such a wide-open heart, in its great sensitivity, can sometimes become overwhelmed or exhausted. It needs a stabilizing element, a calm center in the midst of the storm of life. This brings us to the fourth and final of these divine abodes, the quality that holds and balances all the others. This is the profound practice of upekkha, or equanimity. It is the peaceful mountain that allows us to love deeply and carefully, without losing our balance in the ever-changing winds of the world. And it is to this unshakable peace that we now turn. Having cultivated a heart stabilized by the profound peace of equanimity, we now possess the capacity to turn our attention to one of our most intimate, complex, and often fraught relationships, the relationship we have with our own physical body. With the calm, non-judgmental awareness we have nurtured, we can begin to approach this vessel not with criticism or fear, but with a newfound reverence and kindness. We can learn to see our body not as an object to be perfected, but as a sacred temple that houses our precious life. We live in a culture that worships youth. From a young age, we are bombarded with images of flawless, ageless bodies, and an entire industry exists to convince us that the natural process of aging is a problem to be fought, a failure to be hidden. For women especially, this pressure can be immense. We are taught to scrutinize our reflection, to battle every wrinkle, to lament every change in our shape and form. This can turn the relationship with our own body into a lifelong war, a source of constant anxiety and self-recrimination. We end up feeling like strangers in our own skin, alienated from the very home we have inhabited since birth. The path of Zen invites us to a radical truce. It asks us to lay down our weapons of judgment and criticism, and to look upon our body with new eyes, the eyes of gratitude and respect. This body, with all its perceived imperfections, is a miracle of unimaginable complexity and faithfulness. Consider your heart. It has been beating steadily, day and night, for 60, 70, or 80 years, without ever taking a single vacation. It has pumped rivers of blood through your being, nourishing every cell, Consider your lungs, which have drawn in and released the breath of life millions upon millions of times, connecting you with the air, the trees, and the entire atmosphere of the planet. Consider your feet, which have carried you through countless miles of this life's journey, and your hands, which have allowed you to work, to create, to soothe a crying child, and to hold the hand of a loved one. This body has been your constant companion. It has endured illnesses, healed from injuries, and carried you through moments of profound joy and deep sorrow. The scars it bears are not signs of imperfection, but testaments to its resilience. The changes it undergoes are not a betrayal, but the natural, graceful unfolding of a life cycle. To see the body in this way is to shift from judging its appearance to honoring its function, its loyalty, and its sheer, stubborn will to live. It deserves not our criticism, but our deepest gratitude and most tender care. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate this new relationship is through the practice of a body scan meditation, done with the specific intention of gratitude. Find a time when you can lie down comfortably and be undisturbed. Close your eyes and bring your awareness into your body. Feel the weight of it, the contact it makes with the surface beneath you. And then, begin a gentle journey with your attention. Start with your feet. Bring all of your awareness to your feet, and instead of just noticing sensations, consciously offer them your thanks. Thank you, feet, for carrying me through this life, for allowing me to stand tall, for connecting me to the earth. Then, let your attention travel slowly up to your legs. Feel their strength, the bones and the muscles, and offer them your gratitude. Thank you, legs, for all the walking, running, and dancing, for giving me the power of movement. And continue this journey upward into your pelvis and your belly. This can be a difficult area for many of us, a place of stored tension and judgment. Instead of tightening against it, offer it softness. Thank you, belly. Thank you for holding my vital organs. For the miracle of digestion, thank you for your softness. If you are a mother, you can offer a special thanks to this part of your body for the incredible act of having carried life. Bring your attention to your hands and arms. Acknowledge all they have done for you and for others. Thank you, hands, for your ability to create, to comfort, to work, to feel. Thank you for your endless service. Move your awareness to your heart center. Feel the gentle, rhythmic beating in your chest, and let a wave of profound gratitude arise. Thank you, my faithful heart, for never stopping, for feeling so much love, for your incredible strength. Finally, bring your gentle, kind attention to your face. Feel the muscles around your mouth, your eyes, your brow, and here, we can practice the wisdom of a modern parable. There was a woman who, in her later years, grew to despise her reflection. She saw the network of lines on her face as a cruel map of her decline. One day, after learning this practice, she decided to look at her face, not with judgment, but with curiosity and gratitude. She gently traced the lines around her eyes, and she remembered decades of laughter with friends and family. These are not wrinkles, she realized. These are the remnants of joy. She looked at the vertical line between her eyebrows and remembered the deep concentration of her work, the nights spent worrying about a sick child. This is not an imperfection, she thought. This is the mark of my care, the sign of my love. She saw the faint lines radiating from her lips and remembered thousands of smiles she had given and received. She understood, in a flash of insight, that her face was not a failing object, but a living testament to her life. To wish away the lines would be to wish away the love, the laughter, the care, and the experiences that created them. Her face was the sacred map of her journey, This is the shift in perspective that we are invited to make. This is what it means to listen to the body's messages. The lines on our face are messages from our past. The feelings of fatigue or pain in the present are messages for today. They are not the body betraying us. They are the body communicating with us, asking for what it needs. A feeling of tiredness is a simple, honest request for rest. An ache is a request for gentle attention, for stretching, or for care. When we learn to listen to these messages with compassionate attention, rather than ignoring them or pushing past them, we enter into a true partnership with our body. We cease to be its tyrant and become its loving steward. This deep, reverent listening, this inhabiting of our body as a sacred temple, is not something to be confined to a few minutes of meditation on a cushion. It is a way of being that we can carry with us into every moment of our lives. When we are grounded in our bodies with this kind of respect and kindness, even the most mundane, everyday activities can be transformed into profound practices of mindfulness. The simple act of washing the dishes, of drinking a cup of tea, of walking to the mailbox, can become an opportunity to connect with the miracle of being alive in this precious human form. This brings us to the beautiful art of integrating our practice into the very fabric of our lives, the art of finding meditation in every action. Having learned to inhabit our body as a sacred temple, with a heart balanced by the calm stability of equanimity, we are now ready to bring this practice into the world. A common misunderstanding about meditation is that it is something we do only in silence and stillness, for 20 or 30 minutes on a cushion, separate from the rest of our day. We see it as a special activity, another task to check off our list. But the true goal of sitting meditation is to cultivate a quality of awareness that we can then carry with us into every moment of our lives. The aim is not to become a great meditator who can sit for hours, but to bring the peace, clarity, and presence of meditation into the acts of living. The cushion is the training ground. Life is the real practice. This is the art of action meditation, of finding our Zen in the most ordinary and mundane tasks. The definition of meditation is simply this: paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. By this definition, any activity, no matter how simple, can become a profound spiritual practice. The only thing that needs to change is not what you are doing, but the quality of attention you bring to it. We spend most of our lives in a state of fragmentation. Our body is in one place, while our mind is somewhere else entirely. Our body is at the kitchen sink, but our mind is lost in the past, replaying a conversation from yesterday, or lost in the future, worrying about a bill that needs to be paid. In this state, we are not truly alive. We are ghosts, haunting the present moment, but never truly inhabiting it. This fragmentation is a source of immense stress and dissatisfaction. The practice of action meditation is the remedy. It is the simple, powerful act of bringing your mind back home to your body and being fully present for what you are doing, right here, right now. Let us take one of the most common and often disliked chores, washing the dishes. How do we normally approach this task? We do it impatiently, resentfully, wanting only for it to be over, so we can move on to something more important or interesting. Our movements are automatic. Our minds are a million miles away. Now, imagine approaching this same task as a meditation. You stand at the sink and you take one conscious breath. You are not just here to wash dishes. You are here to be fully alive for the next 10 minutes. You turn on the water and you consciously listen to the sound it makes. You feel the temperature of the water on your hands. You pick up a single bowl. You notice its weight, its shape, its smoothness. As you wash it, you are aware of the slippery feeling of the soap, the friction of the sponge against the ceramic. You are not thinking about the next bowl or the next task. You are giving your entire attention to this one single bowl. In the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, while washing the dishes, one should be completely aware of the fact that one is washing the dishes. It sounds ridiculously simple, but it is profoundly transformative. In that moment of complete presence, there is no past to regret and no future to fear. There is only the warm water, the smooth bowl, and the gentle rhythm of your breathing. There is peace. In his monastery, they have a saying, washing the dishes is like bathing a baby Buddha. You do it with that level of tenderness, care, and full attention. Let's take another example, the simple act of drinking a cup of tea. For many of us, this is a mindless habit. We gulp it down while reading the news or scrolling on our phone. We use it as fuel, but we barely taste it. We can transform this into a 5-minute oasis of peace. Instead of rushing, you prepare your tea with attention. You pour the hot water and watch the steam rise. You hold the warm cup in both hands and feel its heat seep into your palms. Before you take a sip, you bring the cup to your nose and inhale its fragrance. Then, you take the first sip and you let the tea linger in your mouth. You don't just swallow it, you truly taste it. Is it sweet? Is it bitter? Is it earthy? You follow the sensation of the warm liquid as it goes down your throat and spreads its warmth through your chest. In these 5 minutes, you have done nothing but drink tea, but you have also done everything. You have come home to yourself. You have nourished your body and your mind. You have touched the present moment. There is a beautiful story that captures the essence of this practice. A student once asked a great Zen master, "What is the greatest miracle? Can you walk on water? Can you fly through the air? Or read people's minds?" The master smiled and replied, "These things are not the greatest miracle. The greatest miracle is not to walk on water, but to walk on the earth." The student was confused. "But master," he said, "everyone walks on the earth. What is so miraculous about that?" The master's smile deepened. "Very few people truly walk on the earth," he said. "They walk, but their minds are lost in the clouds of their thoughts, their worries, their plans. They are not here. The miracle is to be fully present for a single step, to feel the contact of your foot upon the ground, to be aware of your body moving through space, of the air on your skin, to walk and know that you are walking. That is the miracle. This is the invitation, to find the miracle not in some future enlightenment or a supernatural event, but right here, in the heart of the ordinary. The peace you are seeking is not in a monastery in the mountains. It is in the suds of your kitchen sink. The clarity you long for is not in a mystical vision. It is at the bottom of your teacup. Your life is not the series of grand events you are waiting for. Your life is this breath, this step, this moment. By bringing our full, kind, and undivided attention to these simple, everyday actions, we transform our entire life from a frantic race into a sacred dance. When we begin to practice in this way, when we learn to give our full presence to a single object or a single action, something truly extraordinary begins to happen. We start to see the universe in a grain of sand. As we look deeply into our cup of tea, we see the rain cloud that watered the tea plant. We see the sun that gave it life. We see the hands of the farmer who picked the leaves. We see the potter who crafted the cup. We see the whole cosmos converging in this one simple moment. We begin to perceive the profound, invisible web of connection that links everything to everything else. This brings us to the beautiful and awe-inspiring vision of interbeing, the truth that nothing exists by itself, and that we are all inextricably part of one another. having learned to find the sacred in the mundane, to discover meditation in the simple act of washing a bowl or drinking tea, we begin to notice a profound shift in our perception. When we give our full, loving attention to one single thing, we begin to see that it is not single at all. We begin to see the entire universe reflected in it. This is the gateway to one of the most beautiful and awe-inspiring insights of Zen wisdom, a truth known as interbeing. This is the realization that nothing in this cosmos exists by itself. Everything is deeply and inextricably connected to everything else. This is not a mystical belief, but a deep, observable fact, the logical conclusion of all we have learned about impermanence and no self. If everything is constantly changing and there is no solid, separate core to anything, it means that everything must be made of everything else. To understand this, let us practice a simple meditation together. A meditation made famous by the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. Imagine you are holding a single plain sheet of paper in your hands. On the surface, it appears to be a simple, separate object. But let us look deeply. As we look at the paper, we can see the sunshine. Without the sun, the forest cannot grow. So, the sunshine is in the paper. And as we continue to look, we see a cloud floating by. The cloud becomes the rain. And without the rain, the tree cannot grow. So the cloud and the rain are in the paper. And of course, without the tree, there is no paper. So the forest is here, the feel of the bark, the whisper of the leaves. But it does not stop there. To have the forest, we need the earth, the soil, the minerals. So the earth is in the paper. Then there is the logger who cut down the tree. We can see his hands, his sweat, his breath. We can see the wheat that became the bread he ate for breakfast, and the farmer who grew the wheat. We can see his parents and their parents stretching back through time. All of them are present in this sheet of paper. We can see the truck driver who brought the log to the mill, and the people who work in the mill, and the person who sold you the paper. Their hopes, their worries, their lives are all subtly interwoven with this seemingly simple object. If we were to try and remove any one of these elements, the paper could not exist. If we returned the sunshine to the sun, the paper would vanish. If we returned the rain to the cloud, there would be no paper. If we returned the logger to his parents, there would be no paper. So you see, this sheet of paper is not a separate entity. It is a manifestation of the entire cosmos. It interis with the sun, the rain, the earth, the logger, and all of life. To be is to interbe. Now, let us turn this same deep looking upon ourselves. Look at your own hand. What do you see? You see your mother and your father. For without them, this hand would not exist. And in your mother and father, you see your grandparents and all your ancestors stretching back for millennia. Their DNA, their experiences, their survival are all present in the cells of your hand. Look again, and you see the food you ate today. You see the bread, and in the bread, you see the field of wheat, the sun, the rain, and the farmer. So the farmer and the sun are in your hand. You see the water you drank, which was once a cloud, once part of a river, once inside a plant. The entire water cycle of the planet is in your hand. You see the air you are breathing in this very moment, the oxygen created by countless trees and plankton. Without this gift of oxygen, your hand could not move. So the forest and the ocean are in your hand. You see your teachers, your friends, the authors of the books you've read. Their ideas and their kindness have shaped the person you are. and are therefore present in every action your hand takes. Just like the sheet of paper, if we were to return any of these non-you elements to their source, this being that you call I would cease to exist. You are made entirely of non-you elements. The idea of a separate, isolated self, which we have worked so hard to define and defend, is revealed to be a profound illusion. There is an ancient and poetic image from the Buddhist scriptures that helps us grasp this truth in our hearts. It is the vision of Indra's net. Imagine a vast, cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single intersection, where the threads of the net cross, there hangs a single, perfect, multifaceted jewel. The net is woven in such a way that if you look closely into the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every single other jewel in the entire infinite net. And if you look even more closely into any of those reflections, you will see again the entirety of the net, reflected back again, and so on, into infinity. Each one of us, each being, each plant, each atom is one of these jewels. We are each a unique and beautiful manifestation, yet our very essence contains and reflects all others. The joy of one jewel sends a glimmer of light across the entire net. The suffering of one jewel casts a shadow, however subtle, on all the others. This vision is the ultimate medicine for the ache of loneliness. How can we ever feel truly separate when we understand that we contain the entire cosmos and are in turn contained by it? The feeling of isolation is a product of forgetting. It is forgetting that we are not a lonely, disconnected stone, but a radiant jewel in a magnificent, interconnected web of life. This understanding is not just a beautiful idea. It is the foundation for a profound ethic of care. If we are all interconnected, then to harm another being is, in a very real sense, to harm ourselves. To pollute the river is to pollute our own veins. To cut down the forest is to damage our own lungs. To cause suffering to another person through our words or actions is to send a vibration of suffering across the entire net, a vibration that will inevitably find its way back to our own heart. This realization naturally gives rise to a deep reverence and respect for all of life. We begin to act not from a narrow, self-centered perspective, but from a spacious awareness of our place within the whole. This vision of Indra's net, of interbeing, is a truth so vast that it can be overwhelming for the thinking mind. It is a reality that is often felt more deeply in the heart than it can be grasped by logic. To truly absorb its meaning, to let it settle into the very marrow of our bones, we must sometimes let go of all our words and concepts. We must simply rest in a space of quiet knowing. And this is why, after expanding our hearts and minds to the very edges of the cosmos, the path brings us gently back home to the profound power and wisdom of noble silence. For it is in the quiet that we can truly begin to feel the resonance of our connection to all things. Having journeyed to the furthest reaches of the cosmos with the vision of interbeing, seeing ourselves reflected in all things and all things reflected in us, the path now leads us back home to the very source of inner knowing. A truth as vast as Indra's net cannot be fully captured by the thinking mind. Words and concepts can point the way, but they are not the destination. To truly feel the reality of our interconnectedness, to let it settle from a mere idea into a lived reality, we must learn to cultivate a space for it to land. That space is silence. In our modern world, silence has become a source of fear. We have grown accustomed to a constant barrage of noise, both external and internal. We fill every spare moment with stimulation. Podcasts during our commute, music in our headphones, the television chattering in the background at home. the endless scroll of news and opinions on our phones. When we find ourselves in a rare moment of quiet, it can feel unnerving, empty, even threatening. We rush to fill the void, to distract ourselves from the discomfort of simply being with ourselves. We have come to mistake silence for emptiness, and we fear what we might find in that empty space. But the wisdom of Zen distinguishes between two very different kinds of silence. There is the awkward, empty silence, the silence that is merely the absence of noise. This silence is often filled with our own restless, anxious thoughts, making it feel uncomfortable. But there is another kind of silence, a chosen, intentional silence. This is known as noble silence. Noble silence is not empty. It is full. It is a rich, fertile, and deeply healing space. Imagine your mind is a glass of water filled with fine mud. As long as you are constantly shaking and stirring the glass with noise, stimulation, and mental chatter, the water remains murky, cloudy, and opaque. You cannot see through it. But if you place the glass on a steady surface and simply allow it to be still, if you allow it to rest in silence, the mud will naturally, effortlessly begin to settle. The water, of its own accord, becomes clear. This is the power of noble silence. It is the act of placing the glass of our mind down and allowing the mud of our restless thoughts, our worries, and our plans to settle. It is in this settled quietude that our innate clarity, our natural wisdom, can emerge. We don't have to create this wisdom. It is already there. We simply have to create the conditions for it to be revealed. When the external and internal noise subsides, we begin to hear a much quieter, more subtle voice. It is a voice that is drowned out by the shouting of our ego mind, the inner critic, and the relentless planner. This is the voice of our intuition, the voice of our heart. It does not speak in loud commands, but in quiet whispers, in gentle nudges, in a simple, clear feeling of yes or no. It is the voice of our deepest knowing, the part of us that is connected to the wisdom of the mountain and the truth of Indra's net. To hear this voice, we must learn to be quiet enough to listen. It is this voice that guides us toward compassion, that recognizes the truth in another's pain, that feels the rightness of a kind action. It is our own inner teacher, and it speaks the language of silence. The practice of cultivating silence does not require you to retreat to a monastery for months on end. It is something you can weave into the fabric of your daily life in small, manageable doses. You can start by turning off the radio in your car for the last 5 minutes of your drive home, simply noticing the sounds of the road and the feeling of being in your body. You can drink your first cup of tea in the morning in silence, without the television, the newspaper, or your phone. Just you, the tea, and the quiet of the morning. You can also set aside a dedicated time, perhaps just 10 or 15 minutes each day, to practice sitting in silence. You don't have to do anything. You simply find a comfortable chair in a quiet room, and you sit. You let go of any agenda. You are not trying to stop your thoughts or achieve a special state. You are simply giving yourself the gift of being present without any external demand or stimulation. Thoughts will arise, of course. Just let them come and go, like clouds in the sky. The practice is to become comfortable with the space in which they arise. It is to befriend the quiet. There is a profound story from the Zen tradition that illustrates the supreme power of silence. In the time of the Buddha, there was a great enlightened layman named Vimalakirti. One day, a huge assembly of the most advanced spiritual practitioners gathered in his room to discuss the ultimate nature of reality, the truth of non-duality. One by one, each great bodhisattva stood up and gave a brilliant, eloquent explanation. They used beautiful poetry, intricate logic, and powerful metaphors to describe what non-duality meant to them. Finally, it was Vimalakirti's turn to speak. The entire assembly fell quiet, turning to him with great anticipation, expecting to hear the most profound teaching of all. Vimalakirti sat in his place, looked out at the assembly, and said nothing. He simply remained in a state of deep, unwavering, absolute silence. After a long moment, another of the great bodhisattvas stood up and exclaimed, "Excellent, excellent. This is the true and ultimate entry into the reality of non-duality, to be without words, without speech, without concepts." Vimalakirti's silence was called a thunderous silence because it was more powerful and more eloquent than any words could ever be. It demonstrated the truth directly, rather than just talking about it. It showed that the ultimate reality cannot be contained in our small concepts. Silence is not an absence. It is the presence of a wisdom that transcends language. As we learn to rest in this fertile silence, as the mud of our restless mind settles, the water of our consciousness becomes clear. And in this newfound clarity, a light that has always been present within us begins to shine forth, no longer obscured by the clouds of our thoughts. This is the culmination of our journey. It is the revealing of a beauty that does not fade with time, a beauty that is not applied to the surface, but radiates from the very core of our settled and peaceful being. It is this inner radiance that ultimately allows us to rest, to let go, and to sleep in profound peace. We have arrived at the heart of our journey. Having walked through the landscapes of our mind, having learned to befriend the fire of anger and the waters of sadness, having cultivated a heart of gratitude and joy, and having rested in the spacious peace of equanimity and silence, we come to a place of profound revelation. We discover a beauty that has nothing to do with the surface of our skin or the reflection in the mirror. It is a beauty that radiates from within, a light that has always been there, waiting patiently to be uncovered. This is the culmination of our practice, to realize and to live from this place of inner radiance. In the spiritual traditions of the East, there is a powerful story that perfectly illustrates this journey of discovery. In Thailand, there was once a monastery that housed a huge and ancient statue of the Buddha, crafted from clay. It was a respected and beloved statue, but it was not considered particularly valuable or remarkable. For centuries, monks and villagers prayed before it. At one point in history, the monastery was under threat of being invaded and plundered. To protect their sacred statue, the monks of that time came up with a plan. They covered the entire Buddha in layers of rough, thick clay and mud, disguising it as a worthless earthen object. The invasion came. The monastery was damaged. The monks were scattered or killed. And in time, the secret of what lay beneath the clay was completely forgotten. Centuries passed. The monastery was eventually re-established. And one day, it was decided that the giant, cracking clay statue should be moved to a new location. It was a difficult task. As the crane lifted the immense object, a rope snapped and the statue fell to the ground. A crack appeared on its surface, and a piece of the clay chipped off. A monk who went to inspect the damage saw something astonishing. Beneath the dull, grey clay, he saw a glint of pure, shining gold. With great excitement, he and the other monks got small hammers and chisels and began to carefully chip away the rest of the rough outer casing. As more and more of the clay fell away, an incredible truth was revealed. Beneath the centuries of accumulated grime and mud was a magnificent, breathtaking statue of a Buddha made of solid gold. Its value was immeasurable. Its beauty was radiant. The treasure had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, obscured by a protective but drab outer shell. This story is our story. Each one of us is this golden Buddha. Our true nature, our deepest essence, is one of pure radiance, wisdom, compassion, and peace. It is inherently beautiful and whole. But over the course of our lives, to protect ourselves from the perceived threats of the world, to shield our vulnerability from hurt, we have covered our golden nature in layers of clay. Each layer is a reaction, a habit of mind. There is the clay of anger, the clay of fear and anxiety, the clay of sadness and grief, the clay of envy and comparison, the clay of self-judgment. We have become so identified with this rough outer shell that we have forgotten the gold that lies within. We believe that we are the clay. The entire path of mindfulness that we have explored together is simply the process of gently and patiently chipping away at these layers of clay. Each time you sit with your anger without acting on it, you wash away a piece of mud. Each time you allow sadness to be present without being consumed by it, you dissolve a layer of hardened clay. Each time you choose gratitude over complaint or sympathetic joy over envy, you polish the gold beneath. The practice is not about becoming someone new. It is the courageous work of unbecoming everything that is not you, so that your true, radiant nature can finally shine through. This inner beauty is of a completely different order from the superficial beauty valued by the world. Physical beauty inevitably fades with time, but this inner radiance, this beauty of a peaceful and compassionate heart, only deepens with age. Every difficulty met with grace, every loss endured with an open heart, every wrinkle earned through laughter and care. These experiences do not diminish this beauty. They enhance it. They add to the depth and luster of the gold. This radiance is something that can be seen and felt. It is not an abstract concept. It is the unmistakable light of presence in a person's eyes. It is the warmth that emanates from their smile, a warmth that comes not from a desire to please, but from a genuine state of inner contentment. It is the quality of their stillness, a calm that can soothe a frantic room simply by being there. It is the gentleness in their gestures, the patience in their voice, the way they listen with their whole being. It is the beauty of a person who is no longer at war with themselves or the world, a person who has come home. And it is this state of being that finally allows us to find true rest. The inability to sleep is almost always a symptom of a mind at war. The body lies in bed, exhausted, but the mind is running a frantic marathon, chasing thoughts of yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's anxieties. It is being tormented by the endless second arrows of our own making. But when we have practiced, when we have learned to hold our experiences with compassion and equanimity, the mind is no longer at war. It is at peace, and a peaceful mind gives the body permission to do what it knows how to do best, to let go, to heal, and to enter the profound rejuvenation of deep sleep. So the final practice is a practice of gentle surrender. As you lie in your bed at the end of the day, let this be your meditation. Feel the weight of your body, and with each exhalation, feel it sinking a little more deeply into the support beneath you. Consciously let go of the day. Let go of your roles as a mother, a wife, a worker, a friend. Let go of your plans for tomorrow. Let go of your story. Simply rest as this quiet, open, peaceful awareness. Rest in the golden light of your own true nature, which you have so lovingly uncovered. This is what it means to sleep in beauty. It is not the sleep of exhaustion, but the sleep of profound peace, the rest of a being who knows, in her very bones, that she is already whole, already complete, already home. We began this journey together in the deep of the night, sitting with a quiet loneliness, with a mind adrift in a sea of memories and worries. We began with the feeling of being overwhelmed, of carrying invisible burdens that had accumulated over a lifetime. We have walked a long path since that first moment, a path that has led us not to a faraway land, but ever more deeply into the landscape of our own heart and mind. We learned to anchor ourselves in the gentle rhythm of the breath, finding a safe harbor in the present moment. We learned to watch our thoughts and feelings as clouds passing through the vast sky of our awareness, realizing that we are the sky, not the fleeting weather. We journeyed through the great truths of impermanence, seeing that all things arise and pass away. And in that understanding, we learned to hold our lives with more tenderness and less fear. We looked for the solid, separate self, and found instead a miraculous, flowing process, freeing ourselves from the prison of a fixed identity. From there, our hearts began to open. We learned to offer ourselves the compassion we so freely give to others, to soothe our own wounds with kindness. We expanded that circle of care to embrace all beings, finding joy in their joy, and we discovered the unshakable peace of equanimity. We learned to transform the fire of anger and walk through the deep waters of sadness, finding the wisdom hidden in our most difficult emotions. We rediscovered our own bodies as sacred temples, and our daily actions as opportunities for meditation. And finally, we saw ourselves as part of the vast, interconnected web of life, a shining jewel in the infinite net of Indra. If there is one essential truth to carry with you from this entire journey, let it be this: the most radiant and enduring beauty of a woman is not found in a skin free from wrinkles, but in a soul free from entanglement. Peace is not a destination you must struggle to reach. It is not something you will find in a different home, a different relationship, or a different set of circumstances. It is your original nature. It is the quiet, clear, and spacious awareness that has been here all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise of the mind. The tranquility you seek is as close as your next breath. The freedom you long for is available in this very moment, when you choose to meet reality with acceptance rather than resistance. And so, the true power rests always within you. You hold the key to your own peace. It is in your capacity to be present, your willingness to be kind to yourself, your courage to be with your own experience without judgment. You are the one who can choose to let go of the second arrow. You are the alchemist who can transform the mud of your life into a radiant lotus. Carry this understanding with you, not as a heavy set of instructions, but as a light in your heart. Let it be a gentle reminder that you have a source of profound peace and wisdom within you, always. May you carry this gentle awareness into your rest tonight, sleeping deeply in the beautiful light of your own quiet heart. And may you awaken to the precious miracle of each new day.